My wife said, I hope he'd crashes, while I drove 8 hours through a blizzard to surprise her. Now she's begging after I've frozen our joint account. So I, a 33-year-old guy, and my 31-year-old wife Sophie, have been married for 7 years. A classic narrative. High school sweethearts split up for college, met at a mutual friend's wedding, and the rest is history. Or so I thought. Things haven't been going great recently. Sophie has been distant. It started about 6 months ago, when she started spending more time with her sister, Karen, and her new circle of pals who all seem to drive cars they can't afford and go on vacations they can't afford. I'm not judging, just noting. Sophie began commenting on our starter home and asked when I would advance in my job. I choked it up into a phase. We live nicely. Nice 3-bedroom home in a decent neighborhood. We have 2 decent automobiles, an annual trip, and nothing spectacular, but we are doing well. Or I thought we were. Sophie celebrated her birthday last week. February birthdays are terrible in the Midwest, always cold and often snowy. Plans were canceled, so I resolved to do something special this year. Her actual birthday was on a Tuesday, but she had expressed wanting to visit her sister that weekend because they were planning to go to a spa on Saturday. I told her I couldn't leave work and would have to stay behind. It was a lie. I had actually planned to take Friday off. What's the plan? Surprise her by showing up at Karen's house on Friday evening with her favorite cake from a nearby bakery. Then take her out to a fancy supper that I'd already planned. I had even packed a suitcase containing her favorite dress and shoes. I had it all planned out. Thursday night, weather reports began to look questionable. Winter storm warning, 6 to 10 inches forecast across 3 states, including the entire path I had to drive. Most people would have canceled. I did not. Partly due to stubborn determination, and partly due to a desire not to waste my 3-week-old dinner reservation. I left at 7 a.m., Friday. What was supposed to be a 6-hour travel became an 8-hour nightmare. Driving through snow so heavy that I couldn't see the taillights in front of me was nerve-wracking. 3 crashes on the highway slowed traffic to a crawl. I had to stop twice for coffee simply to remain alert. But I kept thinking about Sophie's expression when I walked through the door. It's worth it, right? Arrived at Karen's neighborhood around 4 p.m. We had to park a block away because the plows hadn't arrived yet. I grabbed the cake box and struggled through ankle-deep snow. My jeans were saturated by the time I reached Karen's front door. The door was unlocked. I could hear them in the kitchen, chatter and laughter. I was ready to yell out when I heard my name. Sophie was in the middle of Jackson's sentence. Nothing. The radio is silent. Karen muttered something I couldn't understand. Sophie spoke again, this time with greater clarity. He texted earlier saying he was stuck at work, probably still there. In this weather, they'd have sent everyone home, she replied. Well, he's probably on the couch with his headphones on, playing that stupid game again. I froze in the doorway. This wasn't my typical lighthearted eye-rolling about my gaming habits. Her voice sounded contemptuous. At least he's not here ruining your birthday week, she remarked. I almost stepped in to introduce myself. I wish I had. Instead, I overheard what happened next. God, can you imagine? Sophie laughed. He'd insist on coming to dinner with us tonight and tell the same 3 stories he always tells. Then he'd get that sad puppy look when I want to go out tomorrow without him. My stomach began to cramp. I stood there, holding this ridiculous cake that I had driven 8 hours through a blizzard to deliver, listening to my wife mock me in front of her sister. Well, at least he's safely out of the way, Karen said. The roads are a disaster. My friend's husband got stuck on the highway for 3 hours. There was a pause. Sophie said something that I'll never forget. God, I hope he crashes. I could use the insurance. I must have made a noise because they both became quiet. I feared I'd been caught until Karen said, or at least a few months of silence. They both laughed. Actual laughter at the possibility of my death or hospitalization. I don't remember making a conscious decision about what to do next. I simply stepped into the kitchen, placed the cake box on the counter, and walked out. Their faces. I've never seen color drain from someone's face so quickly in real life. Sophie called my name, but I continued trudging through the snow back to my car. I sat there for around 20 minutes before finally inserting the key into the ignition. My phone had 17 missed calls and 38 text messages when I looked. I read absolutely none of them. I drove to the nearby motel. It cost me $80 for a room that smelled of cigarettes and desperation. I turned off my phone and stared at the ceiling till sunrise. When I turned on my phone again, there were 63 texts and 29 missed calls. I did not read them. I just texted my pal Caleb. Something happened to Sophie. Need a place to crash for a few days. Theo, being the MVP that is, just replied, "Doors unlocked, beers in the fridge." While Sophie was still at Karen's, I drove the 9-hour journey home and packed 3 suitcases full of clothes and necessities. I grabbed my vital documents from our fireproof box and headed to Theo's. That was 3 days ago. Sophie and I have yet to speak, despite her best efforts. She has called several numbers, left voicemails ranging from crying to angry, and even showed up at my workplace yesterday. I wasn't there because I called in sick. Today, I went to the bank and transferred half of our joint money to a new account in my name, froze our shared credit cards, changed all of my passwords, and informed my boss that I needed to work remotely for a week due to a family emergency. It's all very methodical, which is strange considering I feel like I'm in free fall. The trouble is, I keep hearing those words. I hope he crashes. I could use the insurance. Who says that about someone they should love? Who laughs at their spouse being silent for months? Even worse is the realization that this is most likely not the first time she has said anything similar, only the first time I have heard it. Our friends have begun to reach out. Sophie is apparently telling people that we had a misunderstanding, and I am overreacting. Classic gaslighting film. One mutual acquaintance texted, "Whatever happened, I'm sure you guys can work through it," without even asking for my opinion. I have not told anyone what I heard. Even Theo is unaware of the complete tale, as he is not pushed. He simply keeps the fridge filled and allows me space. Last night, I finally read some of Sophie's messages. They exhibit a predictable pattern. Confusion. Where did you go, and why did you leave? Defensiveness. It was just a joke. You weren't supposed to hear that. Angry words. You're being childish. Answer your damn phone. Manipulative words. I'm worried about you. Please let me know you're okay. Threats include, if you don't call me back, I'm calling the police to report you missing. Excuse me. I can't believe you'd do this to me on my birthday weekend. Not a single real apology. Not a single recognition of how terrible what she said was. After reading that, I blocked her number. I'm not prepared to talk to her. Maybe I'll never be. Today, I met with Graham, a financial advisor whom a coworker suggested. We spent 2 hours sorting through our accounts. I learned some interesting facts, such as Sophie's $17,800 per month online purchasing habit over the last year. Or, how she used a store credit card with a $3,000 amount that I had no idea about. Graham assisted me in developing a strategy for separating our accounts as gently as possible. It's all legal, nothing shady. But Sophie's about to get a reality check on her spending habits. The joint account I left untouched has enough money to cover this month's mortgage and utilities. Following that, we'll see. I'm not aiming to leave her impoverished. I just want her to understand that there are repercussions. The strange thing is, I still find myself wondering if I'm overreacting. Perhaps that was simply a prank. But then I remember her tone, her casualness in wishing me dead, and the laughter that followed. I know I am not. Theo suggests I talk to her, if only to gain closure. Maybe he is right. But I'm still processing, still trying to figure out who the person I married is. Tomorrow marks 4 days of silence on my end. Sophie's sister, Karen, attempted to call today. I didn't respond. Then Aaron, our neighbor, texted. Sophie was at our house crying on the front step because I changed the garage door code. A part of me feels awful, most of me does not. The insurance comment is not the only thing that keeps me awake at night. It is the laughs, the simple manner they both found humor in the idea of my hurting. Who does this? How long has she felt this way? I've also been pondering about the life insurance policy we got out 3 years ago. It's not much, $500,000, but enough to make you hope he crashes, I suppose. I'll call the insurance company tomorrow to inquire about changing the beneficiary. I realize this is getting long, but typing it out helps. Theo knows someone who works as a divorce lawyer. I will meet him for coffee tomorrow. I'm not sure if that's where this is going, but I want to know my alternatives. For those wondering what I'm going to do next, I don't know yet. A part of me wishes I could just disappear altogether, change my number, relocate to another state, and start over. But it feels like running away. Another portion seeks confrontation. I want to watch her expression as I repeat her words back to her. I want her to feel a tenth of the pain I feel. But most of all, I want to get rid of the hollow feeling in my chest. I want to stop seeing her face whenever I close my eyes. I'd like to quit hearing those words and laughs in my head on repeat. For the time being, however, I'm taking things one day at a time, keeping my head down, making plans, and leaving her to wonder where I am, what I know, and what I intend to do. If there is interest, I will provide updates as things go. Regardless, thank you for allowing me to vent. Sometimes the internet is the only place where strangers will simply listen without attempting to solve everything. Still standing and breathing. Jackson's update. Quick, too long, didn't read. A previous article for those joining. I drove 8 hours through a snowstorm to surprise my wife, Sophie, at her sister Karen's place for her birthday. Sophie told Karen she hoped I crashed for the insurance money. He walked away, leaving the cake on the counter. I've been living at my friend Caleb's apartment for 3 days, ignoring her calls and texts while I straighten out my finances. Lots of you requested an update as things progressed, so here we are. It's been a week since my previous post, and 10 days since I heard those words, which continue to repeat in my head like a cursed TikTok sound. They say that anger dissipates. All of the self-help podcasts Caleb has been listening to in the kitchen make this claim. Anyway, the wrath passes, leaving you with a clear head to make wiser decisions. I am still waiting for that portion. Last Wednesday, the 4th day of silence, I awoke with a plan. Not a good or healthy plan, but one that seemed perfect in the moment. I waited until 9:30 a.m., knowing Sophie would be at work. Then I returned home, our home, with 3 empty suitcases in Caleb's pickup truck. The house appeared precisely the same as when I left. The coffee mug remained on the counter and mail piled up by the door, but it felt strange, foreign, like going into a movie set of my life rather than the real thing. I began in the bedroom, packing all of my clothes except the ones Sophie had chosen for me and leaving them hanging in the closet like abandoned cocoons. I took my grandmother's watch from the dresser, my notebooks from the bookcase, and an external hard disk containing all of our images. Perhaps it was petty, but I paid for the dang thing. In the office, I unplugged my gaming setup. We left the desk, which we had bought together, but took the chair. I purchased it after she complained about the squeaky wheels on the previous one. We found our marriage certificate in the filing cabinet and carried it with us. Not sure why, but it felt essential. I slowly removed myself from the house. My books, albums, tools from the garage, and the strange metal sculpture I bought at the art fair she despised. 4 hours spent methodically eliminating my presence. I didn't take anything we'd bought together, including the couch we chose after 3 weekends of shopping, the kitchen table where we'd eaten thousands of meals, and the bed where we'd slept, fought, made up, and made love. I left all of our frame photographs exactly where they were. Something about seeing my face staring back at her from every wall and surface felt right, a reminder of what she had discarded. Before leaving, I did 3 things. First, I lowered the thermostat to 62 degrees. Sophie was usually upset when the temperature dropped below 70 degrees. Second, I removed the refrigerator's light bulb, a little annoyance that would go unnoticed for days but irritated her every time she opened it at night. Third, I set the Wi-Fi password to I hope he crashes 2023 and unplugged the router. Small, trivial things would make her feel my absence in 100 tiny ways before she could grasp the larger loss. As I secured the door behind me, our neighbor Erin was receiving her mail. She furrowed her eyebrows as she looked at Caleb's truck loaded with my belongings, then at me. I just shrugged and explained that I was bringing some items to give. She didn't believe me, her eyes said so, but she nodded and went inside. Midwest civility. Do not ask awkward questions. Mind your own business. Usually irritates me, but that day I was grateful. Back at Caleb's, I placed everything in his garage except 2 suitcases containing clothes and basics. He helped me unload without asking any questions. After we finished, he simply handed me a beer and remarked, "Sometimes life kicks you in the teeth." Thursday was a financial day. We met with Graham again. He had gathered all of our account information and organized it into a spreadsheet that made my stomach flip. Sophie had spent far more than I realized. Not just the store credit card I mentioned earlier, but cash withdrawals from our joint bank account. $300 here, $500 there. Over $12,000 in the last year that she couldn't account for with any receipts or transactions I could find. Graham helped me write an official letter requesting financial separation. No divorce papers yet, but I made it obvious that I would no longer be responsible for any additional obligations she accumulated. She had it couriered to her workplace. Petty? Maybe. Effective? Definitely. I also canceled our joint streaming and subscription services. We changed the passwords for our cloud storage, where we held vital data. I redirected all of my mail to a P.O. box, small, methodical slashes into our interwoven lives. On Friday morning, I finally checked my social media. 17 Facebook messages, 34 Instagram DMs. Even my idle Twitter account had notifications. People checked to see whether I was okay. People are inquiring what happened to Sophie. People choose sides without knowing the entire facts. I only shared one thing, a photograph of a half-eaten birthday cake on a kitchen counter. There's no caption or context, just the cake. Within an hour, my phone exploded. Friends texted to inquire what it meant. Sophie called 6 times within 20 minutes. Her best friend Nina texted me to see if I was all right because Sophie was so concerned. I responded to none of them. That afternoon, I met with Rowan at work to convey my need for some personal time. He was surprisingly understanding, simply asking how much time I needed and if I could still manage the Wilson project remotely. I agreed to the project and requested 2 weeks' time. He didn't question me, simply clapped me on the shoulder and stated that sometimes space was the greatest way to gain clarity. This was the first decent counsel I'd received since the whole thing began. Saturday marked the first serious confrontation. I was in the grocery store, browsing at frozen pizzas and trying to remember which brand Caleb preferred, when someone yelled my name. I turned around to see Karen standing there, shopping basket in hand, face pale as if she had seen a ghost. She began with the usual. Sophie is worried sick. Everyone is concerned. Won't I just talk to her? When I did not react, her tone changed. They said I was being childish. They said it was only a joke between sisters. They claimed I was exaggerating the situation. I finally spoke. I asked her directly if she believed desiring death on your spouse for insurance money was typical sister joke stuff. I asked if she wanted her boyfriend to hear her say something similar. Sophie was asked if she recognized the joke was the product of months of increasing resentment. She had no replies, only muttered something about misconceptions and context. I returned the pizza, left my partially loaded cart in the aisle, and went out. Petty. Yes. Satisfying? Also yes. Sunday was peaceful. Caleb invited several pals around to watch the game. They were all aware that something was amiss. But no one asked. Just handed me beverages and cleared space on the couch. For 3 hours, I felt almost normal. Then Monday arrived, and with it came reality. My temporary leave from work has begun. The house I'd shared with Sophie for 5 years was half empty across town, and my phone showed 15 missed calls from her overnight. I eventually listened to one voicemail. Her voice sounded different, scratchy and rough. She claimed she hadn't been sleeping. He said the house felt odd without me. She said she'd seen more and more of my belongings missing, and it was worrying her. Asked whether I would ever return, or if I was abandoning our marriage. Something about her wording, portraying our relationship as if it were a Tinder connection that could be easily abandoned, hardened something. I texted Caleb that I was going for a drive, and ended up parking outside our houses, mine and Sophie's, for nearly an hour. Her automobile was not there. Even though it was daytime, the porch light remained on, as if she had forgotten to turn it off. The recycle bin at the curb was full of wine bottles. I didn't go inside. I sat there considering how many mortgage payments I had left, if I should sell it and split the cash, or try to buy her out. We were wondering how we had gone from eternity to forensic accounting in 10 days. Tuesday provided another financial surprise. Our credit card provider sent us a notification concerning odd activities. Sophie had spent over $2,000 at department stores and boutiques, retail therapy or purposeful financial sabotage. In either case, I contacted and reported the card as stolen. I had a new one shipped to my post office box. Another bridge is burned. That night, I finally put anything serious online. Not about Sophie particularly, just a simple status. Sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same. Vague enough to mean anything. Detailed enough for those in the know. Sophie would see it. Her friends would notice it. The story was turning from Jackson having a breakdown to something catastrophic happening. Wednesday marks 2 weeks since I heard those words in Karen's kitchen. 2 weeks of silence on my end. Sophie's attempts to contact me over the course of 2 weeks were increasingly desperate. I visited with the lawyer Caleb recommended. Graham is a kind man. Yes, the same name as my financial advisor, which became confused quickly. He outlined my alternatives. Divorce would be simple because we don't have children, but the house and finances would remain complicated. He proposed a legal separation first to give both of us time to sort things out. I consented, and he completed the paperwork on the spot. He said he could have it served as early as Friday. The ball was now moving, gaining momentum with each day of stillness. Things got out of control on Thursday. I was working remotely from Caleb's dining room table when the doorbell rang. Caleb responded, then returned, appearing uncomfortable. "Sophie was outside," he exclaimed, weeping and begging to see me. I sat there transfixed, coffee halfway to my lips, as Caleb clumsily wondered whether he should send her away or invite her in. Neither option felt appropriate. I wasn't prepared to see her. I wasn't ready to hear whatever justification she had prepared. But sending her away felt like handing her ammunition, confirmation that I was being harsh. So I nodded and Caleb allowed her in. She looked terrible. Her hair was filthy, her eyes were red-rimmed, and she was wearing what appeared to be the same sweater from days before. She stopped at the doorway, looking at me as if she couldn't believe I was real. I did not stand or offer her a seat. I simply waited. She spoke first, inquiring whether I was truly having her served with separation papers. Apparently, Graham's assistant had called to confirm our address, and she had persisted until they revealed what the call was about. So much for the sense of surprise. I answered, "Yes, I was." She asked why I wouldn't talk to her and refused to let her explain. Her voice kept catching, as if she was forcing the words out. I informed her that there was nothing to explain. I heard exactly what I heard. She remarked that wasn't what I expected. She had been concerned about job and finances, and her sister always brought out the worst in her. That she did not intend it literally. It was just black humor after a few glasses of wine. I inquired if she remembered exactly what she had said. She paused, then claimed she had said, "I wish he'd just crash on the couch for a while," and that I had misheard. That is when I took out my phone and played the audio. Yes, I did have a recording. Not because I planned it. I had been using a voice memo app to record present ideas while driving, trying to think of something else to get her for her birthday than cake. When I came, the recording did not stop. It was purely an accident, fate, or whatever you want to call it. Her exact words, delivered in her precise voice. "God, I hope he crashes. I could use the insurance." Karen's response. Or at least a few months of silence. Later on there was laughter. Sophie's cheeks turned pale as she listened to herself. She attempted to take my phone. I moved it away. She began crying harder, claiming that it was taken out of context. She did not mean it. She'd never harmed me. I only asked her one question. "Would you have told me about this conversation if I hadn't heard it myself?" Her silence was sufficient. Caleb had made himself scarce when she arrived, but now he returned to the room, nervously urging that they resume the topic another time, when emotions were less intense. Sophie ignored him and focused solely on me. She began listing all of the things she had realized during the last 2 weeks. How much she relied on me. The house felt empty without me. Why couldn't she sleep in our bed alone? How she had never intended to hurt me and would spend the rest of her life making up to me if I would only come home. It was the performance of a lifetime. Tears, shaking palms, and a voice breaking at just the right moments. 2 weeks ago, I would have been moved and believed her. But something had changed within me. I'd spent 14 days reflecting on not only what she'd said, but why she'd said it. The contempt that must have been developing. The casual cruelty. The person who could laugh at the prospect of my death was not the person I thought I'd marry. So I told her the truth. I wasn't sure if I could ever trust her again. The separation papers were not intended to penalize her. They were about shielding myself until I determined whether there was anything left to save. She did not take it well. I started claiming I was wasting 7 years because of one foolish comment. When people vent, they often say things they don't mean. That I was unkind by disappearing and ignoring her. I sat there, allowing her words to wash over me without entering. When she finally ran out of steam, I reminded her that the separation papers will be handed tomorrow, and that she should read them carefully before making any decisions about the following steps. She departed sobbing. Mascara streaked over her cheeks. Caleb returned with 2 beers and stated it was the most unpleasant thing he'd seen since his parents divorced. Dark humor, but I admired the effort. That night I was unable to sleep. I kept reliving her expression when she heard the recording. Shock, panic, but no true sorrow, as far as I could tell. It's only the fear of the repercussions. The papers were delivered on Friday morning, just as promised. By Friday afternoon, Sophie's sister was posting vague social media updates about men who overreact and wreck marriages over misunderstandings. It's funny how families band together even when they know who's at fault. However, something unexpected occurred. Sophie's best friend Nina messaged me, simply a text, stating she had heard the entire story, including what Sophie had truly said, and she was sorry I was going through this. She claimed she'd known Sophie since college and had witnessed her make similar harsh remarks about others. She said she'd tried to talk to Sophie about it before, but was turned down. It was the first message from anyone in Sophie's circle to acknowledge and not diminish my suffering. I did not answer, but it stayed with me. Perhaps Sophie's reply was not a slip in judgment, but rather a reflection of her actual character. Perhaps I had been overlooking or disregarding red flags for years. The weekend passed peacefully. Caleb went on a date, so I had the home to myself. I ordered pizza, watched a sci-fi series Sophie had always refused to watch with me, and tried not to think about the fact that, in another life, in another timeline, I'd be at home with my wife, celebrating our monthly pizza and movie night. Sophie texted only 2 words on Sunday night. I'm sorry. First, sincere apologies in 17 days. No excuses, no demands to speak, just those 2 words. I did not answer, but I gave it more attention than I should have. On Monday morning, day 18 of my new reality, I awoke to see Sophie parked in her car outside Caleb's house, just watching the door. Caleb saw her first and pointed her out through the kitchen window. I called her and inquired what she was doing. She claimed she only needed to see me to make sure I was okay. She stated that she would not approach the house or cause a scene. She simply needed photographic confirmation. It was both unsettling and strangely touching. I advised her to go home because this was not helping either of us. She inquired if I had read her message. I said yes. She asked whether I thought she was sorry. I said I didn't know. Then she posed the question I'd been dreading. Are you filing for divorce? I told her the truth. I hadn't decided yet. She sat in her car for an additional hour before ultimately driving away. Caleb suggested I change the locks on my house, just in case. I agreed, and we spent the afternoon replacing deadbolts. Another minor severance of our interconnected lives. Today is 3 weeks since that night at Karen's. 3 weeks of silence, primarily due to separation and cleaning through the ruins of what I believed was a strong marriage. I'm not sleeping well. I miss dumb things, like Sophie always buying decent coffee, even if it was more expensive. She used to sing horribly in the shower every morning. Her absurd assortment of fuzzy socks would invariably end up on my side of the bed. But I don't miss the rising contempt that I now understand has been building up for months. Don't miss walking on eggshells around her mood swings. Don't miss the subtle jabs that I had dismissed as simply her sense of humor. The separation papers were signed and submitted. The lawyer says we're officially in a legal separation phase, which lasts 6 months. We're still lawfully married, but we're living separately and have our finances divided. After 6 months, we will either reconcile or file for divorce. 3 weeks ago, I would not have hesitated to declare reconciliation impossible. Now I'm less certain. Not because I've forgiven her, but because untangling a 7-year marriage is difficult. Houses, bank accounts, families, and friends are all interwoven in ways I'm only now beginning to grasp. My phone is displaying a notice as I write this. Another note from Sophie. Can we meet? Neutral location, just to talk. Please. I am not sure what I am going to say. A part of me wants to hear her out. Part of me believes it is simply deferring the inevitable. Most of me is simply bored of the whole scenario, but I think I'll agree to meet her, if only to tell her face to face what I've been typing to strangers on the internet. If anything noteworthy occurs, I will provide an update. And thank you for all of the suggestions in the previous article, even the bizarre notions about glitter and her shampoo bottle. Some of you need therapy, but I admire your unity. Still standing and breathing. Jackson's final update. It has been precisely 25 days since I left that cake on the counter. 25 days of stillness, separation, and more adulting than I'd ever desired. This will likely be my final update because, well, there are only so many ways to examine a dead marriage before even the internet becomes bored. First and foremost, thank you for all of your comments and direct messages, even the bizarre ones. No, I didn't follow the instructions to put fish in her car vents. You guys are savages. So, this is the coffee shop meeting. I arrived 15 minutes early since fear makes me punctual. Downtown groundwork. Coffee at 2 p.m. On a Thursday, it was busy enough to provide background noise but not so full that we were overheard. I chose a corner table, ordered a black coffee that I did not desire, and waited. Sophie arrived exactly on time, not 5 minutes late as she normally is. Hair is done, makeup is light, and she is wearing the blue sweater I gave her for Christmas last year. I'm confident that all of these decisions were strategic. The first thing she said after sitting down was not hello. It was that she had lost 7 pounds since I left. Just toss that fact as like it meant something. Stress weight loss as a relational currency. A classic Sophie maneuver. I didn't acknowledge it, instead asking why she wanted to meet. She had prepared handwritten notes on a yellow legal pad. The scene was so unexpected that I nearly laughed. This woman, who would rather die than create a grocery list, had bullet-pointed her way through whatever the goal of the talk was. Her first point was that she sincerely apologized for what she had said. It was nasty and thoughtless, and she did not intend it. She'd been worried about work, unhappy that I was missing her birthday weekend, or so she thought, and spent the afternoon drinking wine with Karen. The words simply came out. I questioned why she had laughed afterward. She flinched as if I had flicked water in her face. They said it was anxious laughter. Karen was continuously bringing out her ugliest side. Said it was a naive attempt to appear edgy and cool in front of her sister. Second point, she had taken our connection for granted. She had grown accustomed to the protection and security I gave. She had stopped appreciating all I did, and instead focused on what I didn't accomplish. Third point, the last 3 weeks have been a wake-up call. She discovered how much she relied on me. Not just financially, though that was a factor, at least she was honest, but also emotionally. They said the house was too quiet. She claimed she had started talking to herself only to hear a voice. Fourth, she wanted to try couples therapy. I had previously discovered someone who specialized in restoring trust after betrayal. I scheduled a preliminary appointment for next week. Wouldn't you please think about it? Throughout it all, I sat there sipping my now cold coffee, scanning her face for traces of the woman who had carelessly wished me dead. Was this an act or genuine remorse? I could still not tell. When she concluded her prepared statements, she set down the legal pad and looked straight at me for the first time. They asked what I was thinking. I told her I was thinking about parallel universes, about how, in another timeline, I would never have driven through that snowfall, never heard what she said, and would still be living in blissful ignorance, sleeping next to someone who would laugh at the notion of my death. She began crying, not the theatrical sobbing from Caleb's living room, but quiet tears that she wiped away with a napkin as if they were an inconvenience. I outlined my terms. No negotiating points, just facts. The separation would last for the full 6 months, as anticipated. I would not be moving back in during that time. I wasn't ruling out reconciliation, but I wasn't saying yes to couples therapy just yet. I needed time. She nodded throughout, as if each word were a little blow she was taking. When I finished, she simply asked if I hated her. The weirdest part is that I didn't. Still, don't. There is anger, disappointment, and hurt, but no hate. I told her that. She seems really astonished. She said she had been persuading herself that I must despise her because I had entirely shut her away. Said it was almost worse that I didn't, because it indicated I no longer cared enough to feel something that powerful. That stung because it wasn't completely wrong. The conversation then came to a close. We agreed to contact via email about practical issues such as the house and bills. She would keep paying the mortgage, which is also in her name. I would continue to pay my fair amount of utilities. We'd reassess in month 3 of the separation. As we stood up to go, she hesitated before asking if she might hug me. I said no. She nodded as if she had expected it, gathered her belongings, and walked away. I remained there for another half hour, thinking about how strange it was to have such a business-like talk with someone I'd seen cry. Someone who has supported your head when you have food illness. Someone who knew every foolish, embarrassing anecdote about your childhood. 7 years are condensed to bullet points on a legal pad. Life proceeded in its strange new routine. Following that, I extended my remote work arrangement till the end of the month. Caleb's extra room felt less transitory once I purchased a good mattress topper and hung a few pictures. I developed routines, morning run, work, 3 gym visits per week, and preparing dinner with Caleb when our schedules coincided. The silent technique continued to produce unanticipated results. Sophie seems to be reflecting despite my minimal engagement with her. A week after our coffee shop meeting, her sister Karen sent me a shockingly humble message. She claimed she'd been a horrible influence on Sophie for years, encouraging her to be brutally honest, read, harsh, as a warped sort of sisterhood bonding. She expressed disgust with herself for laughing that day. She did not seek for forgiveness. She only wanted me to know that she realized her involvement in the issue. I didn't respond, but I did take screenshots, not for leverage, but to remind myself that I wasn't crazy for feeling betrayed. Meanwhile, the financial pressure was more intense than I had anticipated. Sophie's pal Nina reached out again. Sophie stated that she was difficult to sustain her lifestyle on her income alone. She had to cancel her monthly spa membership. Was looking for a roommate to assist with the mortgage, but didn't want to move anyone in because she was still hopeful I'd return home. I noticed the manipulative strategy, which involved using a friend to make me feel bad, but I did not fall for it. I thanked Nina for the news and invited Sophie to contact my lawyer if she wanted to negotiate financial arrangements. Around day 30, Sophie's approach changed. Her communications became less emotional and more realistic. She began selling some of her more expensive clothes and bags through resale apps. She got rid of her second automobile, the ridiculous convertible she insisted on buying last summer. She even said in an email that she was considering taking classes to enhance her earning prospects. It felt like I was witnessing someone's rapid development. Strangely, I felt proud of her, even though I was resolved not to rescue her. Day 35 presented an unexpected twist. I checked the mail at my P.O. box. I opened the box and discovered a hefty envelope from Sophie. Inside, there was a handwritten letter, 10 pages, front and back, and a USB stick. The letter was essentially a chronology of our relationship written from her perspective. Every significant moment, good and unpleasant. The proposal at the lake, our first major disagreement over her spending, the miscarriage in year 3 that we never discussed properly, and the steady shift in how she perceived me, from partner to provider to impediment. It was brutally honest in a manner that our previous chats had never been. She admitted to resenting my satisfaction with our life because she always desired more. She admitted to comparing our lifestyle unfavorably to her friends, although knowing they were drowning in debt only to keep up appearances. She admitted to flirting with her coworker Isaac last year, though she insisted nothing physical happened. The USB stick contained audio files, presumably recordings of her therapy sessions made with her therapist's approval. I only heard one. Couldn't take any more. Hearing her critique our marriage with a stranger, as well as the genuine confusion in her voice when she tried to explain why she said what she did about the insurance money, was too intimate and raw. I erased the files and stored the letter in my document box. I'm not sure if I'll read it again, but throwing it away felt wrong. Day 40 saw another development. We ran into our neighbor Erin at the hardware shop. She mentioned that Sophie had been organizing some sort of weekly gathering at her residence, not parties, but meetings. He claimed there were always 6 or 7 automobiles out front on Wednesday nights. Curiosity got the best of me. That Wednesday, I parked down the street and watched. Between 6 and 6:30, 7 women arrived. All of them were about Sophie's age. Some I recognized as her friends, while others were strangers. I did not approach. That'd be weird. But I did text Nina later, gently wondering what Sophie was up to these days. Sophie, she explained, had founded a women's accountability group devoted to financial literacy and overcoming unhealthy relationship patterns. That wasn't what I expected. Around day 45, the social media dynamics changed substantially. Karen, who had been conspicuously silent about our predicament online, wrote a lengthy status about assisting my sister with her awakening and recognizing detrimental tendencies. She tagged Sophie, who simply replied, "Love you, but this journey is mine to share when I'm ready." Our common pals were aware of this. People who had previously given me space began contacting me, asking what was going on. The rumor mill whirled. Someone had heard Sophie was in rehab. She was not. Someone else had heard that I had depleted our finances and left her penniless. Also false. Another stated we'd been having troubles for years and the split was mutual. Partially true, I suppose. I kept my silence. Let them ponder. Day 50 held a major moment. For the first time since leaving, I returned to the house when Sophie was still there. I needed to get my winter clothing from the garage because Minnesota spring is a lie, and we got 6 inches of snow overnight. I texted her first to make sure everything was okay. She immediately said, "Of course." She'd be at home all day working on a project. Driving into the driveway felt weird. The yard requires mowing. The flower beds remained untended. Small reminders of my absence. Sophie greeted me at the door, but did not hover. She simply told me to spend as much time as I needed before retreating to the kitchen, where she appeared to be painting. The house felt strange. It also smelled strange. Less like my washing detergent, more like the essential oil diffuser she'd always wanted to use, but I thought it was too strong. Photographs had been altered. Some furniture was moved. Not dramatically, but enough to notice. In the garage, I discovered my winter belongings neatly boxed and labeled. Not thrown together in haste, but properly packaged. She'd even included items I'd forgotten about, like my favorite scarf and the pricey gloves my mother had bought me 2 Christmases ago. Sophie came out with a mug of coffee while I was loading the boxes into my car. She asked if I wanted to see what she was working on inside. There's no pressure, just an offer. Curiosity won out. Followed her into the kitchen, where she had set up a little art studio. She was painting wooden signs with encouraging slogans, the kind she used to tease people for purchasing at Target. She appeared ashamed as she stated it was therapeutic, and she had sold a couple at a local farmer's market. We spoke for maybe 15 minutes. Surface-level issues. Weather, her parents' anniversary, and the water heater making that knocking noise again. A typical chat between two people who used to share everything. As I was leaving, she remarked something that stayed with me. She claimed she'd been reading about grief and recognized she was grieving our marriage while yet wishing to save it, that the two things were contradicting each other in her mind. I nodded and said I understood, because I had the same conflict. It was the most honest conversation we'd had in years. Day 60 provided financial clarity. Sophie had been according to our agreement, according to Graham, the financial consultant, rather than the lawyer. There are no new joint debts. She makes regular payments on her personal credit cards. She'd even paid off the store card I hadn't known about. Graham indicated it could be time to explore more permanent financial arrangements, depending on how I felt about reconciliation. I realized I hadn't seriously considered that option in weeks. I had been so intent on establishing boundaries that I had avoided the larger topic. So I developed a pro-con list, similar to how you would choose which car to buy or which job offer to accept. Except that this was about deciding whether to try to save a 7-year marriage or to end it permanently. The list did not help. Certain things cannot be quantified. Day 70. Caleb said that he was seriously dating someone and that they were considering moving in together. Not soon, but in the next few months. He informed me that I could stay as long as I needed, but the implication was plain. It's time to work out a more permanent agreement. That weekend, I visited 3 apartments. I signed a 6-month lease for the second one, a fresh start with a 1-bedroom, walkable downtown location, and a great kitchen. I told Sophie via email. She replied with a single line. I understand, but the door here remains open. Moving day arrived on day 75. Caleb assisted, along with 2 other buddies. 4 hours spent hauling boxes and furniture up 3 flights of stairs since the elevator was broken. Following that, we ordered pizza and beer. I christened the property with a makeshift living room picnic because I hadn't yet purchased a dining table. That night, alone in my new apartment, I finally accessed the photographs folder on my external hard drive. 7 years of memories, trips, holidays, and random daily moments. Sophie is laughing at something off camera. Sophie sleeps with her mouth slightly opened. Sophie in the early days, looking at me as if I hung the moon. I didn't cry. I simply sat there, feeling the weight of everything we'd built and lost. Day 80. Sophie emailed me and asked if we might meet again. She wanted to talk about what might happen once our 6-month separation ended. Even though it was still 3 months away, she wanted to be ready for whatever happened. We met at a different coffee shop with a more neutral atmosphere. She looked nice, healthy. She had chopped her hair to shoulder length. I wore minimal makeup and plain clothing, jeans, a sweater, and boots, and swapped my dazzling designer purse with a canvas tote. The chat was direct. She inquired whether I was leaning toward reconciliation or divorce. I honestly told her that I had not made a decision. I asked what she wanted. She expressed her desire to try again, but only if I could someday forgive her. Really forgive, not merely say the words while harboring animosity. She said she had evolved in the last 11 weeks, and was still changing, and she wanted to show me who she was rather than tell me about herself. I responded I thought she had changed. I said I had also changed. I stated that I was unsure whether our new selves were still compatible or had evolved in different directions. She nodded, indicating that was fair. Then she gave me a sealed packet. Said it included her proposed terms for either reconciliation or divorce. She asked me to read it when I was ready and share my comments. I opened it 3 days later. Inside was the most mature, logical document I could imagine from someone battling for their marriage while ready to end it. For reconciliation, 6 months. Of couples treatment before cohabitation. Full financial transparency on both parties. Regular check-ins on relationship satisfaction. Annual State of the Union meetings to discuss goals and progress. For divorce, fair asset distribution based on participation rather than absolutely 50-50. She would buy out my half of the house for market value. No alimony either way. Clean break with minimal lawyer involvement, if possible. It was rational, sensible, and diametrically opposed to Sophie, who had wished me dead for insurance money 3 months before. I emailed her that both sets of terms appeared reasonable. I asked for time to make my decision. She said simply, "Take as much time as you need. It's day 90 today." It had been 3 months since I heard those remarks in Karen's kitchen. 3 months of silence, seclusion, introspection, and development. I've been thinking about cake. The one I left on Karen's counter. It was supposed to be a birthday celebration. The instant everything changed. This afternoon I went to the same bakery, purchased the same cake, drove it to my new apartment, and placed it on my new counter. Then I took a photo and texted it to Sophie, which was the first direct text I'd sent in 90 days. She made an urgent call. I let it go to voicemail. Then I sliced a piece of cake, sat on my secondhand couch, and listened to her message. She did not beg. Did not make any assumptions. Just stated that she understood the symbolism. She said she would accept any decision I made. She said she was proud of how I carried myself during all of this, with dignity rather than destruction. She apologized again, not expecting forgiveness, but offering it nevertheless. I'll be meeting with the lawyer tomorrow. Not to file for divorce, yet, but to discuss the next steps in any way. To grasp what reconciliation would be like after something like this. I want to know exactly what I'm choosing. Tonight, I'll eat this cake alone. Not out of grief, but because some trips must be completed alone. I'm not sure if Sophie and I have a future together. The wound she caused was deep. She shattered trust, and it will be difficult to rebuild. But I am confident that whatever decision I make will be based on strength rather than fear, clarity rather than confusion. Those statements at Karen's kitchen table showed something unpleasant, but perhaps they also revealed something important. Perhaps we needed to break totally to discover what we were truly made of. Perhaps certain things, once broken, should remain that way. In any case, I am content with the process. The man who left the cake on the counter 90 days ago would have lit himself on fire to keep Sophie warm. The man writing this now understands his own worth. I'll provide one last update after I make my ultimate decision. But for now, I'm going to sign off. Thank you for joining me on this trip, internet strangers. Your counsel, support, and occasional horrific retribution suggestions have been an odd type of therapy. Still upright, still breathing, stronger than before. Jackson. His dad mocked my mom, called me a gold digger. My fiancé just sat there, so I took off the ring and became the woman his mom wished she was. I, 28, walked away from my fiancé, 30, male, 2 years after our planned engagement supper last night. I'm here alone in my apartment right now, still in the outfit I wore, mascara streaking down my face, trying to make sense of what occurred. 3 years ago, Michael and I met at a charity fundraiser. He works in finance, hails from a wealthy family, and moves in circles that I never did growing up. I'm a public school teacher who paid for college with scholarships and part-time work. Despite our diverse backgrounds, we quickly connected. He was charming, clever, and seemed to respect my independence and interest in education. I fell passionately for him, and he seemed to be equally in love with me. He proposed 2 weeks ago while on a weekend trip to the coast. It was private, romantic, and everything I could have hoped for. I agreed without hesitation. The ring was stunning, including an emerald-cut diamond that must have cost a fortune. I was floating on air, excited to begin our life together. Last night, we had our official engagement meal with his family at Liarden, one of the city's most costly restaurants. I'd met his parents a few times before, always feeling uneasy around his father, Richard, a serious investment banker who rarely smiled. Linda, his mother, was courteous, but aloof, the type who values family ties and membership in country clubs. I spent hours getting ready, hoping to leave a good impression. I wore a navy blue dress that I had saved 3 months for, styled my hair in a beautiful updo, and stole my roommate's pearl earrings. I desperately wanted them to regard me as worthy of their boy. The evening began pleasantly enough. Champagne was poured. Congratulations. Michael squeezed my hand under the table reassuringly, any time I appeared apprehensive. Then, during the main course, Richard cleared his throat and focused his attention on me. "So, Rachel," he began, swirling his wine, "now that you're officially joining the family, we should discuss the prenuptial agreement." The table became silent. Michael tightened beside me. "Dad, we haven't even set a date yet," Michael remarked, nervously laughing. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves." Richard's expression stiffened. "Nonsense. These matters should be settled early. The Bennett family assets need protection." I could feel my cheeks burning. "I understand the importance of protecting family assets," I responded thoughtfully. "I don't have any issue with a fair prenup." Linda offered me a faint smile. "How pragmatic of you. Well, you've certainly landed on your feet, haven't you?" Richard continued, his tone becoming sharper. "A schoolteacher marrying into the Bennett fortune. Your mother must be thrilled." "My mother passed away when I was 19. Michael knew this. His parents were aware of this. "My mother would have wanted me to be happy," I remarked gently, my appetite gone. Richard chuckled. "I'm sure she would. Nothing makes a mother happier than seeing her daughter secure a wealthy husband." I looked at Michael, expecting him to say something, to defend me, but he simply stared at his plate. "I didn't say yes to Michael because of his money," I said, my voice wavering slightly. "I love him." "Of course you do, dear," Linda said with feigned sweetness. "The money is just a fortunate bonus, isn't it?" Richard chuckled, a sharp sound that broke through the restaurant's background hum. "Let's not be naive. Pretty young women from modest backgrounds don't pursue men like my son for their personality." I felt as though I had been slapped. "Excuse me, Dad." Michael eventually spoke, but his tone lacked conviction. "What?" Richard challenged. "I'm simply acknowledging what everyone at this table is thinking. She's a gold digger, a rather transparent one at that." Then it occurred. Michael laughed. A quick, awkward giggle that could have been nervousness or an attempt to relieve stress, but it was not a denial. He did not defend me. He laughed. Everything in my mind fell silent at that point. I glanced at Michael, the man I assumed I knew, and realized I was seeing him clearly for the first time. His stillness was deafening, and his chuckle was damning. Without saying anything, I slipped the ring off my finger. I gently placed it next to his water glass. The clink of diamond against crystal sounded unbelievably loud. "Rachel," he began, finally realizing what was occurring. I stood up, grabbed my purse, and left the restaurant. Not rushing, not crying, just walking, one foot in front of the other, head held high. I didn't glance back, even when I heard him say my name. Now I'm sitting here, wondering if I overreacted, whether I ruined my future with one poor dinner. But then I remember his laugh and realize I couldn't have stayed. Was I wrong? Should I have fought harder? Am I simply proving his father correct by stepping away? I'm not sure what will happen next. I just know I couldn't marry into a household where I'd be treated as inferior, and I couldn't be with someone who wouldn't defend me. Act 2. It's been 3 days since I left that restaurant, and my life has been a whirlwind of emotions and conflicts. Michael came to my apartment the next morning. I was still in my pajamas, my eyes sore from sobbing, when I heard his insistent tap. Part of me wanted to ignore him, but I needed to find closure. I needed answers. When I opened the door, he looked terrible. Unshaven, disheveled clothes, black circles under his eyes. He had the ring in one hand and a bouquet of roses in the other. Michael, as usual, believed that great gestures could obscure core issues. "Please," he responded quietly, "let me explain." I let him in, but maintained my distance, arms crossed over my chest like armor. "I'm sorry about last night," he said. "My father was completely out of line. He had too much to drink, and you know how he gets." "Do I?" I asked. "Because in the 3 years we've been together, you've never once mentioned that your father thinks I'm a gold-digging opportunist." He grimaced. "He doesn't really think that." "Yes, Michael. He does. And what hurts more than his words is that you sat there and let him say them. You laughed." Michael raked his hands through his hair, frustrated. "It was just nervous laughter. What was I supposed to do? 'Cause a scene in the middle of Liarden?" "You were supposed to defend me." My voice broke with emotion. You were supposed to tell your father that I'm the woman you love, that I've never asked you for money, that I've worked hard my entire life. You were supposed to be on my side. He put the ring on my coffee table. I am on your side, Rachel. Always. I love you. My father's opinion doesn't matter. But it does matter, Michael. It matters because you're letting him disrespect me. It matters because someday we might have children, and I won't let them grow up hearing their grandfather call their mother a gold digger while their father sits in silent agreement. For a time he appeared perplexed. Silent agreement? That's not what happened. Then what would you call it? He couldn't respond. Has your father always felt this way about me? Michael paused, which revealed everything I needed to know. Why didn't you tell me? I said, my voice soft. Because it doesn't matter what he thinks. I love you for you, your kindness, your passion for teaching, your ridiculous obsession with true crime podcasts. Who cares what my father thinks? I care, I responded without hesitation. Because his attitude reflects what our life together would be like. Every family gathering, every holiday, every milestone, I'd always be the gold digger who trapped their son. And apparently, you'd always be the man who stands by and lets it happen. We can fix this, he said. I'll talk to my father, make him apologize. We can postpone the wedding until things are better. I looked at him intently and discovered something important. This isn't just about your father, Michael. It's about you. It's about who you become when you're around him. I don't recognize that person, and I don't want to marry him. He left after an hour of circular debates, carrying the ring with him. I've spent the previous 2 days crying, doubting myself, and then recalling his chuckle, which made my resolve strong again. My roommate Jessica has been wonderful, bringing me ice cream and listening to me whine for hours. Michael has phoned 17 times. His mother, unexpectedly, texted me. Richard is stubborn, but he'll come around. Don't throw away your future over pride. As if standing up for myself was all about vanity. Yesterday my principal summoned me to her office. Richard reportedly contacted the school board, expressing concerns about my emotional stability and professional conduct. Fortunately, my principal has known me for 5 years and has made it clear that my personal life is none of his business. The idea that Michael's father would want to harm my job reinforces my belief that I made the right decision. What would have happened if we were married and I disagreed with him? Which lines would he not cross? I have not informed Michael of his father's interference. Part of me wants to. See if he finds out and responds correctly. So far, nothing. Tonight, Jessica and I are going to open a bottle of wine and throw a Burn the Wedding magazine celebration. It feels both therapeutic and heartbreaking. I adored Michael. I still love him, but I'm realizing that loving someone isn't enough if they don't have the bravery to support you when it counts. The hardest thing has been dealing with queries from friends and coworkers. Everyone wants to know what happened and why there was such a quick change. I've been vague, merely mentioning that we discovered we wanted different things. It's easier than explaining how the guy I believed would be my husband sat silently while his father called me a gold digger, then laughed as if it were a joke. My sister called from California after I texted her what had happened. She was not surprised. I always thought he was too eager to please his parents, she told me. Remember how he changed his vacation plans last Christmas because his mother said she'd be devastated if he wasn't there? People show you who they are, Rachel. You just have to pay attention. She was correct. Of course, there had been hints all along, small instances in which Michael prioritized his parents' demands over mine or ours. I dismissed them as him being a decent son who respects his family. Now I realize it was something else. A fundamental unwillingness to stand alone, to be his own man. I passed by a bridal boutique yesterday and noticed a dress in the display that was almost identical to one I had bookmarked for myself. For a brief moment, I felt that familiar sense of loss, not just for Michael, but for the future we'd planned. The house we spoke about buying, the children we might have had. The life that now existed only in some parallel universe where he was brave enough to pick me. But then I remembered Richard's expression when he dubbed me a gold digger. That cold, contemptuous stare that reduced me to nothing more than a fortune chaser. And I remembered Michael's laugh, that quiet, damning giggle that conveyed more than words ever could. No, I made the correct choice. And eventually, when the grief has subsided, I hope Michael realizes it too. Update: 2 weeks. It's been 2 weeks since I ended my engagement, and the tempest has finally calmed. I've returned to teaching, finding comfort in my third-grade students' simple affection and interest. When your own life feels unpronounceable, helping a child sound out a tough word can be incredibly therapeutic. I haven't spoken with Michael in 10 days. After dozens of calls and texts, he eventually sent me an email outlining where we stand. He wrote that, while he still loves me, he believes I'm being overly dramatic about one terrible evening. He suggested we take a pause until I am ready to be reasonable, as if advocating for my dignity was ridiculous. The most telling section came at the conclusion. My family has certain expectations, Rachel. They've sacrificed a lot to give me the life I have. Sometimes compromise means accepting imperfect situations for the greater good. Reading between the lines was simple. The greater good referred to his inheritance, position in his father's firm, and social standing. I was supposed to compromise my dignity, self-respect, and worth. He'd also avoid having to confront his father. I did not answer your email. What could I add that I hadn't previously said? What I did not expect was Linda's call 3 days ago. She asked if we could meet for coffee alone. Despite my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a tiny cafe away from her typical haunts. She appeared different, less polished, and more human. She ordered a black coffee and sat across from me, her hands neatly folded on the table. I owe you an apology, Rachel, she said without explanation. What happened at that dinner was unacceptable. I was speechless. This was not what I expected from Linda Bennett. Richard can be traditional in his views, she added cautiously. And Michael has always sought his approval, sometimes at great personal cost. I noticed, I replied dryly. She grinned slightly. I should have intervened that night. I've been intervening for 30 years, smoothing Richard's rough edges, excusing his behavior. I was wrong not to speak up. I studied her expression, attempting to comprehend the rapid change. Why are you telling me this now? She sighed, a deep sound that seemed to convey decades of resignation. Because I see myself in you, Rachel. 30 years ago, I was you. From a humble upbringing, in love with a Bennett guy, and striving to show myself worthy. The difference is that I stayed, made a compromise, and convinced myself that it was worthwhile. She paused. I'm not sure it was. Something clenched in my chest. Are you unhappy? Not exactly. I've had a wonderful life, lovely children, but I've lost a part of myself along the way. My voice, my certainty. When you stood up and walked out that night, I was envious. We spoke for about 2 hours. She told me about her early years with Richard, how his family treated her, how she progressively gave up portions of herself to fit into their world, and how she saw Michael become more like his father year after year, despite her best attempts. He loves you, she added as we were about to depart. More than he's ever loved anyone. But love isn't always enough, is it? I shook my head, tears threatening again. No, it isn't. She briefly touched my hand. Whatever you decide, Rachel, don't compromise yourself away. Not for anyone. I've been thinking about our chat ever since. Was she warning me, encourage me? Are you saying goodbye? Maybe all three. This morning, flowers arrived at my apartment, not from Michael, but from Richard. The card simply stated, my behavior was inexcusable. There is no specific apology, only an acknowledgement. Typical. I have not informed Michael about either interaction. I don't know if his mother or father have mentioned them to him. Part of me wonders whether this is another test, whether he'll make apologies because he wants to or because his parents forced him to. Jessica believes I should block his number and move on. My brother believes I escaped a gunshot. But it isn't so straightforward, is it? I did not merely lose my fiancé. I lost the future I imagined we'd have, the house we planned, the children we talked about. Dreams do not die quietly. Every morning I reflexively examine my left hand, expecting to feel the weight of the ring. Its absence remains both a source of sorrow and relief. Update. 1 month. 1 month after the engagement dinner, life has taken some unexpected turns. Last weekend I was packing up my flat. I decided to move to a smaller house because I couldn't afford this one without Michael's help until he showed up unexpectedly. Seeing him in the entryway, surrounded by half-filled boxes and packing tape, made my heart pound violently. You're moving? He inquired, seeming stunned. I can't afford this place on a teacher's salary, I admitted simply. He gazed around at the destroyed life that we had built together. I'll keep paying my share. You don't have to move. Yes, I do. I put down the books I was packing. What are you doing here, Michael? He'd come to tell me he was leaving his position at his father's corporation. He had accepted a position with a smaller financial advising firm on the other side of the city. He handed me a letter containing his father's perplexed and angry reaction to his resignation. "I should have done this years ago," he said gently. "Been my own man instead of his echo." I invited him inside, prepared coffee, and we talked. For the first time in years, we had a genuine conversation. He stated that he had spent his life chasing his father's approval, even if it meant sacrificing his own principles. He admitted how badly he had affected me, not just at that evening, but countless times previously, in subtle ways I hadn't recognized. "I don't expect you to take me back," he told me. "I just wanted you to know that you were right about all of it." I wasn't sure what to say. Part of me wanted to fall into his arms and say we could start anew. Another part remembered the expression on his face when his father called me a gold digger. That little pause before the nervous laugh, as if he'd considered the possibilities. "I need time," I informed him. "I'm proud of you for standing up to your father, but this isn't just about him." He nodded in understanding. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here if you're ready." After he went, I sat among my boxed up stuff, oddly tranquil. For the first time in weeks, the future did not appear to be an endless, scary void. Linda invited me out for lunch 2 days later. She informed me Richard was distraught by Michael's decision. She appeared different, lighter, with a spark in her eyes I hadn't seen before. "Richard doesn't understand why Michael would walk away from everything for—" She blinked. "For a woman." "For himself," I corrected softly. She smiled. "Yes, I suppose he did." Before we separated, she placed a little velvet purse into my palm. Inside was a vintage sapphire ring. "This was my grandmother's," she clarified. "Richard never liked it, said it wasn't impressive enough for a Bennett wife. But it's the only thing I have from my family." She closed my fingers around it. "Whether you and Michael find your way back to each other or not, I want you to have it. A reminder to keep your own light, even when others try to dim it." I tried to reject, but she insisted. "It was not an engagement ring," she explained. "It was unity among women who understood one another." I did wind up moving, but not to the smaller apartment I had intended. My friend Megan was looking for a roommate in her house across town, further from Michael, closer to my school, with a garden where I could grow the herbs I'd always wanted to try. It feels right, making judgments based completely on what I desire, rather than what works best for someone else. Michael and I have begun conversing, carefully and honestly. No huge gestures, no pressure, only coffee once a week. Conversations that reveal previously unquestioned assumptions and expectations. He's different away from his family's shadow, funnier, more easygoing, and more real. Last week he asked if we might try again. Make a fresh start. I told him I wasn't ready, that I needed to figure out who I am without him before deciding who I might be with him. "I understand," he stated, and I believe he truly did. I am wearing Linda's sapphire ring on my right hand today. Not as a promise to anyone else, but as a commitment to myself. I will never suppress my own voice, compromise my worth, or tolerate being perceived as less than I am. I'm not sure if Michael and I will find our way back together. I'm not sure if the adjustments he's making will last. I'm not sure if I can ever totally trust him again. But I know this. Walking out of the restaurant was the most difficult and necessary thing I'd ever done. Sometimes the most difficult steps are those that lead you back to yourself. Update. 6 months. 6 months have passed since that fateful supper, and it feels both recent and distant. I'm sitting on the porch of my new house. Yes, it's my house. A little craftsman with blue shutters and a maple tree in its front yard. Instead, I utilized the money I had saved for the wedding as a down payment. Each mortgage payment seems like an endorsement. This is mine. Earned by me. I chose this. Michael and I attempted. We actually did. For 3 months, we rebuilt our relationship from the ground up, with honest conversations, couples therapy, and clear boundaries. He stuck with his new work despite his father's growing push to return to the family business. He attended a support group for adults living with domineering parents. He was doing everything correctly. And yet, something basic had changed. Every time he took me out to dinner, I found myself scanning the room, tense at the sight of older guys who looked like Richard. When he presented me to coworkers, I examined their expressions for signs of judgment or dismissal. The previously shattered trust was not being repaired. Despite both of our attempts. We were eating supper at my house 2 months ago when I finally got up the guts to express how I felt. I don't think we can fix this, I admitted quietly. He put down his fork, his face sad but not startled. Because of my father? No, I responded genuinely. Because of us. Because now I know what I need in a mate, and you know what you need to be for yourself. And I don't believe we can give each other those things when we're together. He nodded slowly. I was afraid you'd say that. I felt it too. We sobbed together that night, mourning not just what we had lost, but also what we had discovered too late. He kissed me farewell at my door, returned Linda's sapphire ring when I attempted to return it, and walked out of my life with dignity and elegance. Richard sent a brief and official note. Michael informs me of your final separation. I wish you well in your future endeavors. Coming from him, it was almost like a warm embrace. Linda and I still meet for coffee on occasion. She resumed painting, something she had stopped doing after marrying into the Bennett family. Last month, she showed me a watercolor of two people sitting by the sea. That's us, she replied, in another life. I've been promoted to lead teacher at my school, with a small yet significant wage rise. I've started dating again, but cautiously and selectively. Nothing serious yet, but I am open to the prospect. More significantly, I feel complete on my own, in a manner I never have before. My pals joke that I should publish a book. How leaving a fancy restaurant changed my life. Perhaps someday I will. For the time being, I'm pleased to sit on my porch, watching the maple tree's leaves turn color and feeling the weight of Linda's ring on my right hand. A reminder of both the lady who did and did not walk out. I ran into Michael last week at a downtown coffee shop. He was with an unidentified woman who was laughing at something on her phone. He looked up and noticed me, his smile breaking just before resuming. We exchanged niceties and brief updates. As I turned to leave, he softly touched my arm. Thank you, he replied simply. For what? For having the courage I did not. For showing me what it's like to value oneself. I smiled, a genuine smile, free of the ache that had accompanied my thoughts of him for so long. Take care of yourself, Michael. I am, he answered. For the first time, I really am. Walking away, I felt the last piece of a complex puzzle fall into place. Sometimes loving someone entails leaving them. Sometimes the happily ever after isn't the fairy tale we expected, but the world we create for ourselves. Brick by brick, choice by choice. I slipped the sapphire ring from my finger and into my pocket. I didn't need the reminder anymore. I've become a reminder. Of strength, of worth, the power of going away when staying would be too expensive. Was it all worthwhile? The pain? The loss starting over? As I unlock the door to my little blue house, mine alone, I know the answer with absolute confidence. Yes.
After my wife passed away, my sister-in-law tried to take my children. She called CPS on me, but the judge's decision left her completely shocked. I, 29M, lost my wife, Mia, 31F, in a horrific vehicle accident 6 months ago. We have twin sons, Ethan and Noah, 7M, and their transition to life without their mother has been extremely challenging. Mia and I met in high school. She was a senior and I was a sophomore. It was not love at first sight or anything dramatic like that. We were lab partners in AP biology, and at first we couldn't stand one another. Mia believed I was a slacker because I was often joking around, and I thought she was stressed because she was obsessed with obtaining perfect grades. However, as we worked together during the semester, things changed. I could see Mia was passionate about science, and her eyes lit up when she talked about her ambitions to work in technology. She recognized that, despite my joker demeanor, I was actually quite excellent at biology and cared about succeeding. We began hanging out outside of class, studying together, and those study sessions evolved into date nights. When Mia left for college, everyone assumed we wouldn't last. They believed high school relationships couldn't survive long distance, but we proved them wrong. We talked every day, saw each other as frequently as possible, and when I graduated 2 years later, I chose a college near her so we could finally be together again. We married just after I finished college. There was a little ceremony in Mia's parents' backyard. Mia's sister, Jen, 35F, served as maid of honor, and my best college mate was the best man. Mia's parents, John, 62M, and Linda, 60F, were overjoyed. They had always regarded me as a son, and now it was official. We had the boys a year later. It wasn't planned, and we were both shocked to learn Mia was pregnant, and much more so when we discovered she was carrying twins. However, the moment Ethan and Noah were born, they became our entire universe. Mia was always the ambitious one. She secured a position as a software engineer at a major technology business right out of college and swiftly rose through the ranks. I had studied education with the intention of becoming a teacher, but when the boys were born, we felt it would be more practical for me to stay at home with them. Mia's pay was more than adequate to sustain us, and childcare for twins would have consumed the majority of my potential teaching compensation anyhow. I like being a stay-at-home dad. I got to see all of the boys' firsts. First steps, first words, and first day of school. Mia would come home every evening, eager to hear about their day, and weekends were always spent with the family. We lived a lovely, happy life. Then 6 months ago, everything shifted. Mia was heading home after a late night at work. It had been pouring, the roads were slick, and a drunk driver had run a red light and damaged her vehicle. She was killed on impact. In a moment, our lovely little world was shattered. The first several weeks following Mia's death were a fog. I was in shock, going through the rituals of preparing the funeral and caring for the boys without fully absorbing what had happened. Jen and Mia's parents were quite helpful throughout that time. They essentially moved in, preparing meals, assisting with the boys, and taking phone calls from well-wishers. However, as the weeks passed into months, I began to feel suffocated. Jen, in particular, appeared reluctant to leave. She'd come over every day, frequently staying until late in the evening. At first, I was appreciative for the assistance. She'd cook meals, help with the boys' homework, and even begin teaching them how to play the piano, which Mia had always wanted to do but never had the time for. Jen's behavior did, however, become more controlling and judgmental over time. She began making comments about my parenting. She'd say things like, "Mia would have done it this way," or "the boys need a woman's touch." It hurt, but I brushed it off, believing she was also grieving. She then proceeded to criticize my job search efforts. With Mia gone, I needed to start earning money to support the boys, but if I mentioned a job application or an interview, Jen would reply, "You should be focusing on the boys, not your career." Or, "Mia wouldn't want you to put the boys in daycare." I tried to explain that I had no choice. Our funds would not last forever, and while Mia had life insurance, I preferred to save that money for the boys' future. But Jen would not listen. She insisted that she and her husband, Mark, 37M, could help out financially if necessary. Jen arrived unannounced with a bundle of documents last week, escalating the situation. She sat me down at the kitchen table, where Mia and I had spent countless evenings discussing our future, and informed me that she thought it would be best if she became the boys' legal guardian. I was stunned. Jen went on to say that she and Mark could create a more stable home situation for the boys, who needed a mother role. She discussed how they had a larger house in a better school district, how Mark's position as a lawyer meant they were financially stable, and how she could remain at home full-time with the boys, just as I had done. I listened in disbelief as Jen explained her idea. She assured me that I could still see the boys whenever I wanted, and that this was not about taking them away from me, but about doing what was best for them. She even proposed that I move in with them, at least temporarily, to aid with the transition. When I finally found my voice, I told her, no, absolutely not. These were my children and Mia's children. We raised kids together and planned their futures together. I was fully capable of raising children on my own. Jen did not take my refusal well. She started ranting, accusing me of being selfish and not thinking about what was best for the boys. She brought up every minor error I'd made in the previous 6 months, such as forgetting to pack Ethan's lunch for a school trip or Noah receiving a low mark because I didn't assist him study for an exam. She had the audacity to suggest that Mia would be disappointed in me. That was the final straw. I lost my temper and ordered Jen to leave. I told her she was no longer welcome in our home unless she respected my status as the boy's father. She departed in tears, and I assumed that was the end of it. Yesterday, I received a call from Child Protective Services. They informed me that someone had expressed concern about my abilities to care for the boys. They didn't say who created the report, but I knew it had to be Jen. I am enraged and afraid. A CPS worker is due to investigate our home next week. I contacted John and Linda to explain what had happened, hoping they could persuade Jen. Instead, they agreed with her. They believe I am being unreasonable and should consider Jen's offer for the benefit of the boys. They even propose that I live with them and allow them help raise the children. I feel like I'm under attack from all sides. These people claim to love my boys, but they are attempting to destroy the only stable thing the twins have left, their bond with me. I'm doing my best to balance everything, and while I've made mistakes, I adore my sons more than anything in the world. Last night, after I put the boys to bed, I sat in Mia's former home office, surrounded by her belongings. Her degrees on the wall, family photos on the desk, and even her favorite coffee mug, which was right where she left it the morning before. I broke down and cried for the first time in months. I miss her so badly. I miss her counsel, her laugh, and the way she could always relax me when I was stressed. I'm not sure how to do this without her, but I need to figure it out for Ethan and Noah. They have already lost their mother. I can't let them lose their father either. I do not know what to do. Should I concede to avoid a messy legal battle? Should I lose relations with Mia's family entirely? How can I safeguard my rights as a father while simultaneously doing what is best for my boys? Update 1. It's been a month since my previous post, and a lot has changed. First and foremost, I'd like to express my gratitude for everyone's kind remarks and advice. Your remarks helped me gain perspective and find the courage to speak up for myself and my sons. The CPS visit was 2 weeks ago, and it went better than expected. Sarah, the social worker, was both compassionate and professional. She arrived early in the morning, right as I was preparing the boys for school. I was nervous, but I tried to appear normal for Ethan and Noah's sake. Sarah observed our morning routine, me making breakfast, well, pouring cereal, but hey, it was a healthy brand. Assisting the boys in packing their backpacks, and double-checking that Ethan had his inhaler. She appeared impressed by how well the boys behaved and how easily everything went. Sarah inspected our home after I dropped the boys off at school. I'll admit that it wasn't spotless. There were some dishes in the sink from the night before and toys scattered throughout the living room, but it was clean where it counted. No safety concerns, plenty of food in the fridge and clean clothes in the boys' wardrobes. I showed Sarah the boys' room, which still contained some of Mia's touches. She had created a woodland painting on one wall when the boys were toddlers. They adore it so much that I can't force myself to paint over it, even though it breaks my heart every time I see it. Sarah spotted the piano in the main area and inquired about it. I mentioned how Jen had been teaching the boys to play, but I didn't go into depth about our disagreement. I did add that music was important to Mia and that I was trying to keep that aspect of her alive for the boys. I had prepared a folder with crucial documents, including the boys' medical records, school reports, and even a detailed plan of our daily activities. I also have documents for my job search and financial preparations. Sarah appeared impressed with my organization and effort. During her visit, Sarah interviewed me about our current predicament. I was open about the obstacles I've faced as a single father, but I also highlighted all of my efforts. I told her about our family counseling sessions and how I've encouraged the boys to talk about their mother and their emotions. Sarah didn't inquire who wrote the CPS report, but she did ask whether anyone had any reservations about my parenting. I pondered before deciding to be honest. I recounted the scenario to Jen and Mia's parents, including my assumptions about who had made the report. Sarah declined to confirm or deny, however she did state that fraudulent reports are handled extremely seriously. Sarah called me about a week following our visit. She informed me that the case would be closed because there was no evidence of neglect or abuse. She also stated that they would be looking into the source of the report for any potential system misuse. I felt a great weight lifted off my shoulders. With that hurdle crossed, I resolved to confront Jen. I asked her over to chat while the boys were at a friend's house. She was clearly nervous when she came. We sat at the kitchen table, where she had startled me with her guardianship papers a month before. I carefully lay out everything. How her actions had affected me and the boys, my suspicions regarding the CPS report, and my next steps. I informed her that, while I appreciated her assistance in the beginning, her subsequent acts had crossed a boundary. Jen burst into tears, confirming that she had actually phoned CPS. She said she was concerned about the boys and believed she was doing the right thing. She mentioned how seeing me struggle reminded her of when Mia and I first started dating, and how protective she had been of her younger sister. I then told her that, while I realized she was also suffering, her behaviors were inappropriate. I stated that for the time being, she would not be permitted unsupervised visits with the boys. She would only be able to view them if I was present. Jen did not take it well. She accused me of using the boys to punish her and threatened to sue for grandparents' rights on John and Linda's behalf. I held firm, warning her that any additional threats would result in her losing all contact with the boys. After Jen had left, I called John and Linda. I described everything that had transpired and my decision about Jen. To my surprise, they were more understanding than I anticipated. They admitted to being concerned, but later realized they had gone too far. They apologized for recommending that I give up custody and asked if we could work on repairing our relationship. We decided to start with brief, supervised visits. They came over last weekend, and it was fine. Not spectacular, but not bad either. The boys were delighted to meet their grandparents, and John and Linda appeared to make an effort to support rather than question my parenting choices. I've been honest with the boys about what's going on in an age-appropriate way. They miss their aunt, but they've shown incredible resilience. We've started attending a family counselor to assist us get through this difficult period. Noah confessed during our previous session that he sometimes feels upset at Mia for leaving us. It crushed my heart, but the counselor indicated it's a common reaction for children struggling with loss. On a good side, I was able to acquire a work-from-home position as a customer support representative for an online retailer. It's not ideal, and certainly not what I expected to accomplish with my education degree, but it allows me to be present for the boys while also earning a living. The hours are flexible, so I can work while the boys are in school and after they go to bed. I've also contacted out to other of Mia's former colleagues, who have been really sympathetic. Several of them have offered to serve as references for me, and one even assisted me in updating my resume. It's bittersweet. These are folks I used to see at corporate picnics and holiday parties, and now they're assisting me in finding work because Mia is no longer with us. It is still a battle. Every day I am overcome with emotion when I look at the boys and see Mia's eyes or grin, and it hits me all over again that she is no longer with us. But we're figuring out our new normal. Last night, as I was snuggling the boys into bed, Ethan asked if we could go to the park where Mia used to take them on Saturdays. It hurt, yet it felt good to recall those pleasant days. We're planning to go this weekend. I am more motivated than ever to be the father that Ethan and Noah deserve. Mia and I may not have prepared for this, but I am confident she would be pleased with how we are handling it. We'll be okay. Update 2. It's been 3 months since my previous update, and I wish I could say things had improved, but life seems determined to throw more problems at us. Jen reached out about a month ago to apologize. She explained that she had begun bereavement counseling and realized how improper her actions had been. She asked if we could begin mending our connection. I was cautious, but I agreed to let her observe the boys in supervised settings. We started with short visits to our residence. Jen would come over for supper once a week, and we'd play board games or watch movies together. It was awkward at first, but eventually things seemed more normal. The boys were overjoyed to have their aunt back in their life, especially since she started their piano lessons. Things were going nicely for a few weeks. Jen seemed to accept my boundaries, and there were times when I felt like we were reuniting as a family. She even helped me paint the boys' room. We preserved Mia's woodland mural while updating the rest of the walls to reflect the boys' current interests. But then, last week, everything crumbled again. I received a call from the boys' school in the middle of my work shift. Ethan experienced a severe asthma attack, and when they attempted to use his inhaler, they realized it was empty. I was horrified. I regularly check their inhalers and carry extras at school. I dashed to the school, my pulse racing the entire way. When I arrived, I found Jen in the nurse's office with Ethan. She was distraught, apologizing repeatedly. Ethan was pale and wobbly, but well. The school nurse was able to utilize a nebulizer to assist him with breathing. Jen had picked up the boys from school the day before, with my consent, and driven them to the park. Ethan had a slight episode, and they depleted his inhaler. Jen agreed to tell me so I could refill it, but she forgot. She was so embarrassed that she didn't say anything, hoping that I'd check it myself before the boys left for school. I was infuriated. Jen had not only endangered Ethan's life, but she had also violated my trust. In the heat of the moment, I informed her that she was no longer welcome in our life. I yelled some nasty things that I'm not proud of, but I was terrified and angry. The next day, I received a letter from an attorney. Jen and Mia's parents are seeking grandparents' rights and custody of the boys. They are saying that I'm an unfit parent, citing the asthma event and the earlier CPS report as evidence. I am devastated and afraid. I cannot lose my boys. They are all I have left of Mia, and more significantly, they are my entire universe. I have called a family lawyer, and we are planning to fight this. But I'm worried. What if the judge thinks I'm an inadequate parent? What if they believe the boys will be better off with Jen and their grandparents? To make matters worse, my work-from-home job is faltering. The company is downsizing, and I'm concerned about losing my income just when I need it most for legal bills. I've started applying for various jobs, but it's difficult to find something that gives me the flexibility to care for the boys. The guys realize that something is wrong. They have been asking about Aunt Jen and why they are unable to see her. I'm trying to shelter them from the legal battle, but it's difficult. Noah has begun to have nightmares, and Ethan's asthma appears to be flaring up more frequently, most likely owing to stress. Last night, I discovered Noah sitting in Mia's old office, gazing at images of her on her computer. He asked me if mommy would be upset with him for missing Aunt Jen. It broke my heart. I sat with him and we went through the images, discussing our greatest recollections of Mia. I told him that mommy would never be mad at him for his sentiments, and that it's okay to miss someone even if we disagree with them. I feel like I'm failing them. I strive so hard to be both a mother and a father, to care for them financially and emotionally, but it never seems enough. I miss Mia more than ever. She would know how to manage it. She always knew exactly what to say to make things better. Mrs. Rodriguez, our neighbor, has been a godsend throughout this. She is a retired teacher who lives next door and has been helping me with the boys after school. She has offered to testify on my behalf if the custody matter proceeds to court. It means a lot to know that someone notices how hard I try. I'm not giving up, however. These are my guys, and I will fight with everything I have to keep our family together. I only hope this is enough. Update 3. It has been 6 weeks since my last update, and I'm relieved to report that things have finally improved. The custody struggle between Jen and Mia's parents went to court. It was a tough process that took several days. I had to sit there and listen while Jen and her lawyer branded me as an unfit parent, pointing out every mistake I had made since Mia's death. They discussed the asthma incident, the CPS report, and times when I had been late picking up the boys from school due to work. But my lawyer was fantastic. She helped me remain cool and presented our argument effectively. We had character witnesses, Mrs. Rodriguez, the boys' teachers, and even some of Mia's former co-workers, who testified to how involved I am in the boys' lives, how they are always clean, well-fed and happy. Mrs. Rodriguez's testimony was quite moving. She mentioned overhearing me reading to the boys every night, even when I was fatigued from work, and how she frequently observed us playing in the backyard or doing homework together. We also had evidence of all of my efforts, such as documentation of our therapy sessions, the boys' improved grades, and even a notebook I'd kept to chronicle Ethan's asthma symptoms and treatments. The turning point came when the judge requested to talk with Ethan and Noah alone. I was nervous, but I was confident the boys would tell the truth. When they came out, Noah went up to me and hugged me tightly. The judge did not tell me what they said, but her eyes shone with new comprehension. In the end, the judge decided in my favor. She stated that, while I'm not perfect, I am a dedicated father who does his best in difficult circumstances. She chastised Jen and my in-laws for attempting to bully me through the judicial system rather than working together to benefit the boys. The judge ordered Jen and Mia's parents to come to family counseling with us if they want to keep their contact with the boys. They agreed, and we have had 2 sessions thus far. It's been tense, but I'm hoping we can rebuild trust for the benefit of the boys. On the work front, I received unexpected excellent news. One of Mia's former co-workers contacted her with a job offer. It's an entry-level employment at the tech business Mia previously worked for, with flexible hours and the ability to work from home as needed. The compensation is significantly more than my current employment and there is possibility for advancement. I start next month and am both excited and nervous. The guys are doing better too. We've settled into a good pattern and they're becoming more honest about their feelings. Last week, Noah said he was proud of me for fighting the bad guys in court. It made me realize that, despite my efforts to insulate them, they know more than I give them credit for. We still have terrible days. Sometimes I reach for my phone to text Mia about something hilarious the boys did only to realize she's gone. The boys still grieve when they mourn their mother, but we are learning to navigate this new normal together. I understand we have a long road ahead of us, but for the first time in a long time, I am optimistic about our future. Mia would be proud of how far we've come, and I'm determined to keep going for the boys and her memory. Thank you for your continued support along this journey. Your wisdom and nice words have been a lifeline at the most difficult times. We'll be okay. My family kicked me out because my sister falsely accused me of stealing her engagement ring. 3 years later, they discovered it in the garbage disposal. I never imagined I'd be telling this story, but here goes. I'm Elliot, 26 years old, and 3 years ago my life was flipped upside down by a false charge made by my older sister, Gemma, 29. I grew up in a little Ohio town with my parents, John, 55M, and Lisa, 53F, and my sister, Gemma. We lived in a modest 2-story house that my parents purchased when they first married. It was not fancy, but it was home. My father worked as a high school math teacher, and my mother was a nurse at the local hospital. They weren't wealthy, but they made sure we got all we needed. Growing up, Gemma and I were quite close. We'd spend hours playing in our backyard, climbing the ancient oak tree and inventing complicated games. She was always the leader, making up the rules and plots, while I was content to follow along. As we grew older, however, things began to alter. Gemma was always an overachiever. She was the top of her class, captain of the debate team, and appeared to thrive in whatever she tried. In contrast, I was more laid back. I performed okay in school, but I was never as motivated as Gemma. As we approached our adolescence, this disparity began to erode our relationship. By the time Gemma left for college, we had grown apart. She attended a prominent university on a scholarship, whilst I stayed local and attended community college. I didn't know what I wanted to accomplish with my life, so I took a range of classes to figure it out. Gemma relocated to the city after graduating from college and began working at a large marketing agency. She'd return home for holidays and occasional weekends, full of stories about her fascinating life and excellent profession. I couldn't help feeling inferior in contrast. I was still living at home, working part-time at the local grocery shop, and trying to figure out my next step. Despite our differences, I always assumed Gemma and I were fine. We weren't as close as we were, but I assumed it was just part of growing up. I had no idea how quickly everything might fall apart. Gemma and her boyfriend, Tom, 31M, were engaged 3 years ago. They had been dating for 2 years, and everyone was ecstatic. Tom was a lawyer from a wealthy family, and my parents idolized him. He proposed with a stunning diamond ring that has been in his family for generations. Gemma was overjoyed and couldn't stop showing it off to everyone. The engagement celebration was a large occasion. My parents brought what seemed like the entire town to our house to celebrate. I recall feeling a little out of place among the rich people Gemma and Tom had invited from the city. I remained close to my old high school pals who were still in town, feeling more at ease with them than with Gemma's sophisticated set. A month after the engagement, all hell broke out. It was Tuesday afternoon and I had the day off work. I was in my room, playing video games and enjoying the quiet house. Gemma was visiting for a week, taking some time off work to begin arranging the wedding with our mother. I heard Gemma return home from a shopping trip with Mom. They were talking and laughing downstairs. I didn't think much about it and returned to my game. Around an hour later, I heard Gemma scream. I ran downstairs to check what was going on, and she accused me of taking her engagement ring. She explained that she took it off while doing dishes and left it on the kitchen counter. When she returned to grab it, it was gone. I was stunned and quickly denied taking it, but Gemma refused to listen. She kept shrieking that I was the only other one in the home, so it must have been me. She mentioned how I was always jealous of her success and how I probably wanted to sell the ring so I could finally move out and accomplish something with my life. Our parents arrived home in the midst of the chaos, and Gemma recounted her version of events. To my horror, they believed her wholeheartedly. My mother began to cry, questioning how I could have done such a thing to my own sister. My father merely looked at me with disappointment in his eyes. They began searching my room and turned everything upside down. They didn't find the ring, but they did discover some money I had saved from my job at the supermarket. It wasn't much, maybe a few hundred, but Gemma quickly picked up on it, claiming I must have sold the ring and that's where the money came from. I tried to explain that I had been saving for months and was considering taking some classes at the local community college, but no one listened. The following few days were a nightmare. My parents and Gemma repeatedly pressed me to confess and return the ring. They threatened to contact the police if I did not come clean. I was afraid and felt entirely alone. Nobody in my family believed me, and I was treated like a criminal in my own home. I tried contacting several of my pals, but the majority of them had moved away after high school. The few who remained in town appeared unwilling to become engaged in family strife. I felt more alone than ever. After a week of relentless accusations and threats, my parents made a decision that would alter my life forever. They told me I needed to go. They said they couldn't trust me longer and that I was putting shame on the family. They gave me 2 days to pack my belongings and leave. I was devastated. I had nowhere to go and didn't know what to do. My best buddy from high school, Ryan, 26M, who had recently returned to town after serving in the army, offered to let me rest on his couch for a time. But I knew I couldn't stay there long. His apartment was small, and he was still getting back on his feet. I packed everything I could into a backpack and an old duffel bag, including clothes, books, my laptop, and a few memories from brighter times. As I was leaving, I noticed Gemma eyeing me from her old bedroom window. I thought I caught a glint of doubt in her eyes, but she quickly turned aside. Walking out of that house, the only one I'd ever known, was the most difficult thing I had ever done. I felt deceived and abandoned by those who were supposed to love me completely. The saddest part was that I had done nothing wrong. For the next 2 months, I alternated between Ryan's couch and cheap motels as I could afford them. I took on any odd jobs I could find to make ends meet. I've worked as a dishwasher, dog walker, and even spent a few weeks on a construction job. It was a challenge, But I was determined to prove my innocence and succeed on my own. Eventually, I got a solid job at a warehouse on the outskirts of town. The job was hard, the hours were long, but the pay was consistent. The salary wasn't spectacular, but it allowed me to rent a modest room in a shared house with some other warehouse workers. I gradually began rebuilding my life, but the grief of what had happened never went away. I'd lie awake at night, repeating the events in my memory and wondering how they had gone so wrong. How could my family have turned against me so quickly? How could Gemma, who had grown up with me and knew me better than anyone else, believe I would do such a thing? I cut all communication with my family. They attempted to contact me several times in the beginning. My mother would leave heartfelt voicemails urging me to come home and make things right. My father sent a few terse text messages indicating we needed to discuss. Gemma did show up at the warehouse once, but I declined to see her. I couldn't bear to speak with them after what they had done. They were no longer my family. For 3 years this was how I lived. I made new friends at work and in my shared home. We'd hang out after shifts, drink beer, and watch games. It wasn't the life I had envisioned for myself, but it was mine, and I had created it from scratch. I worked hard and was even promoted to shift supervisor at the warehouse. I started attending online classes to learn business management. I was slowly deciding what I wanted to accomplish with my life, but there was always a part of me that was outraged and wounded by what had occurred. I missed my previous life and family, but I couldn't forgive them for not believing me. Every holiday season was challenging. When I saw families shopping together or heard Christmas music, I felt a sense of sadness for what I had lost. Then last week, I received an unexpected email from my father. The subject line simply stated, "We need to talk." The message was brief, stating that they needed to meet with me immediately and that it was regarding the ring incident. At first, I was tempted to dismiss it as I did with all of their previous attempts to reach me. But something made me hesitate. Maybe it was curiosity. Or maybe a small part of me still wanted a conclusion. After arguing with myself for hours, I decided to listen to them. I called my father, and what he said left me stunned. The ring had been found. Gemma had accidentally knocked it into the garbage disposal while doing the dishes. She only recognized this a few days ago, when the disposal began making unusual noises and they summoned a plumber to inspect it. My father claimed Gemma was upset when she understood what had transpired and that I had been telling the truth all along. He stated they all felt bad about what they had done to me and wanted to make things right. I hung up the phone, experiencing a swirl of emotions. On the one hand, I felt vindicated. I had always told the truth and now everyone knew it. However, I was angry. I was outraged that it took 3 years to find out the truth, that I had missed so much time with my family, and that I had fought alone for so long when I had done nothing wrong. Now I'm at a crossroads. My family wants me to return home, they claim they want to make things right. Gemma has been phoning and messaging nonstop, asking for forgiveness. But I'm not certain I can forgive them. They pushed me out without hesitation. Chose to think the worst of me, and left me to fend for myself for 3 years. Part of me wants to send them all to hell and let them deal with the shame of what they did to me. But another part of me misses my previous life and wonders whether there is a way to rebuild what we've lost. I do not know what to do. Should I give them an opportunity to make amends, or should I continue living the life I've created for myself without them? I'm torn and could appreciate some outside insight on this whole situation. Update 1. It's been a week since my previous post, and a lot has happened. I'd want to thank everyone for their advice and support. It truly helped me go through my emotions and figure out what to do. After much debate, I chose to meet with my family. I believed I owed it to myself to confront them and seek closure, even if I wasn't convinced about reconciliation. We decided to meet in a neutral site, a modest coffee shop in the next town over. I chose it because it was far enough from our hometown that we wouldn't run across anyone we knew, yet close enough that anyone could get there without too much effort. I was quite nervous on the day of the meeting. I hadn't seen my family in 3 years, and I wasn't sure what to expect. I arrived at the coffee shop early and chose a table in the corner where we could enjoy some solitude. When they walked in, it was like a hit in the belly. Seeing them after 3 years was intense. My mother burst into tears the moment she saw me. She was older than I remembered, with more gray hair and creases around her eyes. My father appeared weary and tired, his shoulders drooping as if he were carrying a huge weight. Gemma couldn't look me in the eye at first. She appeared smaller and less confident than the sister I recalled. We sat down, and for a time, no one knew what to say. They all started talking at once, with apologies falling out. My parents said they had failed as parents by not trusting me and kicking me out. They admitted that they had regretted their decision every day since, but pride and humiliation had prevented them from reaching out sooner. My father, who had always been a man of few words, talked for hours about how he had repeated those days in his head, trying to figure out how he could have been so blind. He claimed he had always prided himself on being fair and reasonable, but that emotion had clouded his judgment when it counted the most. My mother, through tears, told me how she had preserved my room exactly as I had left it, hoping that one day I would return. She stated she would wake up in the middle of the night, thinking she had heard me coming home, only to realize what had transpired. Gemma burst into tears, stating she would never forgive herself for accusing me and damaging our relationship. She mentioned how she had always looked up to me when we were youngsters, even though I was younger. She admitted that she had been so preoccupied with her own life and troubles that she had lost sight of what was truly important. As they talked, memories of our childhood came flooding back. I remembered how Gemma stuck up for me when I was bullied in middle school. I reflected on all the times we had laughed together, exchanged secrets, and supported each other during difficult times. It made the betrayal hurt even more, but it also reminded me of the fantastic times we'd had. I heard everything they said, but I couldn't bring myself to forgive them just yet. The anguish and resentment from the previous 3 years were still too raw. I informed them that I needed time to comprehend things. They appeared to comprehend and did not push for more. My mom wanted to hug me before we went, but I backed away. I wasn't prepared for that kind of closeness yet. The hurt look on her face almost convinced me to change my decision, but I remained firm. I needed to protect myself emotionally. After the meeting, I returned to my apartment and carefully considered what I wanted. Did I want to go back to my previous life? Can I ever trust them again? Was it worth attempting to repair our relationship? I recognized that, while I missed having a family, I had also developed significantly in the previous 3 years. I had become self-sufficient, robust, and had created a life for myself from scratch. I wasn't the same person they'd kicked out 3 years before. I reflected about my warehouse work, my online education, and the friends I'd made. I had worked hard to reach where I was, and I was pleased with what I had accomplished on my own. The thought of abandoning that and returning to my old life felt awful. At the same time, I couldn't deny that seeing my family had triggered a variety of feelings. Despite everything, I still loved and missed them. I wondered if I could have a relationship with them while still keeping my independence. After a few days of deliberation, I reached a decision. I called my parents and explained that while I appreciated their apology, I was not yet ready to fully reconcile. I informed them that I needed more time and space to heal. I also established some boundaries. I indicated I was willing to maintain minimal contact with them, but I wasn't going back home or pretending nothing had occurred. I told them that if we were to continue our connection, it had to be on my terms. They expressed disappointment but said they understood. They promised to respect my boundaries and allow me the time I needed. My mother asked if she might phone me once a week to check in, and I agreed, assuming it would be a nice approach to gradually re-establish trust. As for Gemma, I've decided to keep my distance for now. Her actions had affected me the most, and I wasn't ready to forgive her just yet. I told her I needed more time before I could consider having another relationship with her. She was upset, but explained that she understood and would wait until I was ready. It's been a rough week, with many emotional highs and lows. I've had moments when I questioned my decision, wondering if I'm being too harsh or if I'm passing up an opportunity to reunite with my family. But then I recall how quickly they turned on me, and I realize I'm doing the right thing by taking things slowly. I've also started researching therapeutic possibilities. Many of you suggested it in the comments, and I believe it would be beneficial to have a professional to speak with while I navigate this tricky situation. I've never been to therapy before, so I'm a little nervous, but I think it could be beneficial to me. For the time being, my primary focus is on my job and studies. I have a huge project coming up at work, and I'm determined not to let all of this family drama distract me from my goals. I am also thinking about moving to a better apartment. I've been saving, and I think I'm ready for a place of my own without roommates. Thank you again for your support. It's comforting to know that there are individuals out there who understand and care, even if we've never met. I'll provide an update if anything substantial changes. Update 2. It's been almost a month since my last update, and I'd like to share some developments. I've been sticking to the boundaries I've established with my family. We've had a few phone calls and text messages, but nothing particularly intense. It's been okay, awkward at times, but not as painful as I expected. My parents have mostly respected my wishes. They check in every now and then, but they don't ask for more than I'm prepared to provide. I can tell they are working hard to rebuild trust, but it is a slow process. My mother calls once a week, as we promised. These calls were strained at first, with extended silences, but they are becoming easier. We usually discuss neutral issues, such as her employment at the hospital, the weather, and my online education. It's not much, but it's a beginning. My father has been sending me short emails, usually simply to check in or share something he thinks I'd be interested in. Last week, he forwarded me an article about a new business launching in our hometown. It was a little gesture, but it reminded me of how he would clip newspaper stories for me. When I was younger, Gemma struggled with the barrier I'd created between us. She sent me many long, emotional texts apologizing and pleading for the opportunity to make things right. I responded simply, stating that I need more time. It's difficult, but I'm holding firm on this. I know she's hurting, but I'm not prepared to deal with her feelings on top of mine. The big news is that I have started treatment. I discovered a counselor that specializes in family trauma, and we've had a few sessions thus far. It has been difficult to bring up all of the grief from the past, but I believe it is helping. My therapist is assisting me in resolving my anger and trust issues, as well as providing me with strategies for setting good boundaries. In our last session, we discussed how the incident with the ring was more than just the accusation, but also years of feeling like I didn't measure up to Gemma's accomplishments. It's made me recognize that there were difficulties in our family dynamic long before the ring incident and that healing will require addressing those as well. One unanticipated result of all of this is that I've become closer to my pals, particularly Ryan. They've been extremely supportive throughout the entire ordeal. Ryan even offered to accompany me to any future family meetings for moral support. It's taught me that family is more than just blood. It's about who supports you when things go rough. Work has been a welcome distraction. I've poured myself into my career and even received a modest promotion. I'm now in charge of inventory management for my shift, which means additional responsibility and a minor pay increase. It is nice to have something pleasant to focus on. In terms of my living situation, I've decided to stay where I am for the time being. It's not much, but it's mine and symbolizes the independence I've worked so hard for. My parents offered to help me find a better place, but I declined. I have to do this on my own. However, I began to carefully consider choices for furthering my studies. A state institution located approximately an hour distant provides night classes. I am considering applying to their business program. It would be a significant move, but I believe I'm prepared for it. Overall, I'm taking it one day at a time. Certain days are harder than others. There are times when I mourn our easy connection as a family, but then I recall how fast they turned on me, and I realize I can't rush this process. My therapist thinks it's good to have mixed feelings about everything. She encourages me to be patient with myself and not feel obligated to forgive before I'm ready. We're working on techniques for dealing with upcoming family gatherings and holidays, which are making me more apprehensive than I'd like to admit. For the time being, my priorities are recovering and creating a life I can be proud of, with or without my family. It's not easy, but I'm positive about the future. I'm learning that it's all right to put myself first, and that creating boundaries does not make me a horrible person. Thank you for your continuing support. Your comments and messages have provided me with strength during this process. It's comforting to know I'm not alone in coping with familial issues like these. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my original post, so I thought it was time for a last update. A lot has changed during the last few months. The biggest news is that I've decided to relocate to a different place in search of a new employment opportunity. It's a significant advancement in my profession, and I'm looking forward to the new opportunities. The job is with a logistics company, and the work is comparable to what I did at the warehouse, but on a much larger size. It's a management role, which I've been working toward for a while. The income is much higher than what I was making previously, and it includes benefits such as health insurance and a 401k plan. Before making this decision, I had a lengthy conversation with my therapist. We talked about how this move will influence my healing process and my relationship with my family. Finally, we agreed that this could be a good thing for me, an opportunity to fully stand on my own 2 feet and identify myself outside of the family drama. I informed my parents about the transfer last week. They were astonished and disappointed, yet they expressed their understanding. My mother cried a little, stating she had hoped we'd have more time to restore our relationship before my departure. My father was more stoic, but I could see he was disappointed too. They were both concerned about me being alone in a strange place, but I told them that I'd be okay. Gemma took it the hardest. After I told her, she showed up unannounced to my flat, pleading with me not to go. She admitted that she felt like she was losing me all over again. It was a challenging conversation, but I held my ground. I informed her that this was something I needed to do for myself, and that our relationship was not in a position where her opinion could influence my decision. Our relationship is improving, but it is not perfect. We've enjoyed several family dinners in recent months. They've been uncomfortable and awkward at times, but we're gradually learning to be around each other again. Trust is still a major issue. I sometimes question their motives, wondering if they truly believe what they say or if they are simply attempting to relieve their guilt. My therapist has been crucial throughout this. She has helped me analyze my emotions and create boundaries. She has emphasized that forgiveness does not imply forgetting or pretending that the trauma never happened. It's about letting go of my anger in order to find peace of mind. I've taken that to heart. While I don't believe I'll ever forget what happened, I'm attempting to forgive my family. Not for their sake, but for mine. It was hard to carry around all of my anger and bitterness, and I'm ready to let it go. As I prepare for this relocation, I've been thinking about everything that has transpired. 3 years ago, I thought my life was finished. I'd lost everything, including everyone I cared about. But now I see how much I've learned from that experience. I'm stronger, more independent, and have a better understanding of my own worth than I ever had. I don't know what the future holds for me and my family. We intend to stay in touch once I relocate, with weekly phone calls and visits during the holidays. It's a start. Perhaps, with time and distance, we will be able to create something new. For the time being, my attention is focused on the future. I'm excited about my new work, the new city, and the opportunities that await me. I've started looking for apartments online and researched the region where I'll be residing. It's a mix of excitement and trepidation, but I'm largely looking forward to this next chapter in my life. Whatever happens to my family, I'm confident I'll be okay. I've shown to myself that I can deal with whatever life throws at me, and I've learned the value of surrounding myself with people that believe in and support me, whether they're related or not. Am I the asshole for telling my sister I don't know if I love her after finding out about her 5-year affair? Original post. My sister, 32, moved in with me because she got pregnant 5 months ago from what she claimed was a one-night stand. I love my sister, so of course, I took her in. My husband is overseas for 6 more months, so it was nice to have her around because I care about her very much. On Monday, I came home and saw my sister and a strange woman in a screaming match on my doorstep. I obviously didn't know what was happening, but I saw the woman poking my pregnant sister's shoulder, so I intervened. I sent my sister inside, and she begged me to send the woman away. I didn't understand what was going on, but I wanted the altercation to end for everyone's sake, so I told the woman as much. Then she started screaming, asking me if I was also sleeping with her husband. I was like. And then she basically revealed that my sister had been having an affair with her husband for 5 years. 5 years. She had everything printed out, chats, photos, emails, receipts. It was disturbing to see, and I didn't want to go through it all. But a few things were established. My sister knew about his wife. She knew she was the mistress and liked it. This woman was a stay-at-home mom to their 4 kids, one of whom has a severe disability from a car accident. Her husband knew about my sister's pregnancy and even took her on a baby moon to celebrate it. The affair had been going on the entire time, with my sister believing he would eventually leave his wife for her. My sister had fully embraced the role of being the other woman, and was emotionally invested in their relationship, despite his repeated lies about leaving his wife. I told the woman I was very sorry and that I obviously didn't know, but I asked her to leave because this wasn't going anywhere, and I didn't want the neighbors to call the police. She was furious but gave me her number on a post-it, begging me not to let her husband stay at my house. I assured her that no man was stepping foot in my home. My sister was begging me not to believe the woman, calling her a vindictive ex-wife. I told her, all right then, let's look up the marriage online. Let's see if a motion for dissolution of marriage was ever submitted. We fought hard. My sister kept saying I would never understand and that they loved each other, but he just couldn't leave his wife, blah blah blah. I called her dumb and naive. The next day, I told her she could stay here because I didn't want her to become a financial burden on that woman in any way, but I also told her that right now, I didn't want to engage with her. My sister asked me if I still loved her, and I told her honestly, right now, I can't say I do. I will always help my nephew and not endanger you, but I can't like you because you've shown me you're not a trustworthy person. I told her I didn't trust her not to try anything with my husband, and I didn't trust her with anything at all, so I made her sign a tenants agreement. She's been begging me to forgive her, and I told her there's nothing to forgive. I just don't know who she is anymore. AITA. Some of OOP's comments. Commenter, NTA, you need to make sure she is out of your home before your husband comes home, because you are right, you cannot trust her. OP, I wouldn't worry. I trust my husband 100%. Not my sister anymore though. I already told him and asked if she ever did something and he said no. Commenter, NTA, your sister's behavior was vile and inexcusable. That poor woman and her children. Her husband is an absolute POS. OP, I said the affair started 5 years ago, right? Now guess when she wife and the kid got into an accident that left the kid disabled. Commenter, and your sister knew? She's a despicable person and I'm amazed how strong you are for still keeping her housed with you NTAOOP. She met the flicking kids. Took them to the zoo with the bastard commenter. Wow, that is severely ballsy. OOP. She wanted them to get to know her so she could hop right into the mom role as soon as he divorced his wife. Yeah, right. OOP's parents. They died 7 years ago. Commenter. You should ask for pics so you know what this guy looks like, and arrange to get outdoor cameras at the least so your sis isn't sneaking him around when you're at work. It should be grounds for eviction if she does allow him around. OOP, I saw him in the pictures his wife showed me. Also I work from home ATM. So no dice why OOP lets her live with OOP. One of my reasons is that I don't want her to get an apartment on his dime when that money should go to his kids. Also, my nephew doesn't deserve to be born homeless. OOP expands. She pays me no rent. So if he gives her money there is nothing that I can do. But living on his dime in an apartment he would pay for and possibly put in his name. Dangerous. Commenter. Just curious, what does your husband say about this situation? OOP. He said that it is very disappointing she turned out to be like that and said that it is difficult to trust her as she proved to be such a good liar. She is the one who helped me with the tenancy agreement and all. Commenter. Downvoted? Yeah, that whole thing might just be so that she has tenant rights so that she can try to ruin your fucking life. OP, listen, you don't know which country I'm from. We got legal help and did this together with someone that actually has a clue. We saved our asses like this. If not that, would be akin to squatters' rights in the US. Commenter. OP, what are you going to do once the baby is here? Assuming the dad wants to be in the kid's life at least somewhat, I think it's unreasonable to ban him from the house. OOP, if she wants him there she can get her very own apartment. If she still wants to stay and save up for the baby she has to adhere to my house rules. She is free to go and see an outside. To another commenter. I put up my rules. If she wants to stay she has to adhere to them. She has been told. She still has 4 months to make that decision. If she wants him physically with her after birth she can do that. But not in my house. How the wife got OOP's address. She got the address from BIS phone update post. First, I'd like to clarify a few things. I am not going to tell my sister to get rid of the baby, that's not my place, and I would never suggest such a thing. Also, I am not going to install tracking software on her phone or demand access to all her devices. That's invasive and wrong. I've been thinking a lot, and while I can't say that I don't love my sister, it's very hard to feel that love right now. I don't know who she is anymore. It's not just that she lied to me, it's what she did and how convinced she is that she was justified because they were in love. She's brought chaos into my home that I opened up to her. I'm deeply disappointed in her, and I just don't like her at the moment. I'm letting her stay with me because I don't want her to become dependent on him. I don't think he's a good man either, and as a social worker, I've seen these scenarios too many times. My sister is already deluded. I don't need to open the door to a dependency that's also financial. Now, on to the update. I haven't been punishing my sister, but I've been treating her like a roommate. This is driving her crazy. She's begging me to go back to how things were before, but I can't. I told her that I need time and that things can't just return to normal overnight. She tried to explain how it all happened. She admitted that she always knew he was married but believed she could tell how unhappy he was and felt he deserved to be happy. They met at a bar a few weeks after his son's accident. He told her that his wife hadn't touched him since it happened and that he was about to explode. I asked her why she would involve herself with a married man, knowing the hurt it would cause. She said she wanted to be a wife and a good mom, and that included his kids. She had hoped he would divorce his wife so they could all move on and finally be happy together. I just stared at her, unable to comprehend how she could rationalize her actions. A few days later, he appeared at our house, claiming he had left his wife and wanted to be with my sister. I told him to leave immediately or I would call the police. My sister was furious with me, accusing me of ruining her chance at happiness. I made it clear to her. If he comes over again, I will evict her. She's free to date anyone she wants, but not under my roof. I also told her that if she plans to have him around after the baby is born, she'll need to find her own place. Word has gotten around our community about the affair. While we were grocery shopping, a woman even spat on my sister. Many of her friends have cut ties with her, calling her a home wrecker. Some are married themselves and don't want her near their husbands. I haven't said I told you so even once. We unexpectedly ran into his wife at a local cafe. My sister wanted to apologize and suggested that maybe they could all have a good relationship for the sake of the kids. The wife laughed coldly and said, "You made your choices, now live with them. Don't expect me to make this easier for you." My sister is devastated and has been lying in bed ever since. I'm taking care of her physical needs, making sure she eats, stays hydrated and attends her prenatal appointments, but I can't bring myself to comfort her emotionally. I just don't have it in me right now. OOP's comments. Commenter, is your sister mentally sound? She seems to be living in a fantasy world. NTA OOP, I don't think she is having a psychotic break. I think she is in too far, and now that she has destroyed her life, she is trying to make it work. Commenter, to get in this far she can't be a good person, and neither can he. They're both so insanely selfish that they put getting laid over destroying his kid's family and home. I feel horribly for that child, its parents are trash. OOP, that has also been my thoughts. Commenter. I asked the last time and wasn't answered. How did your sister make it to like 32, IARC, and wasn't living with you? Was she working? Why did she immediately stop working the second she found out she was pregnant? If she didn't, why did she give up her apartment and move in with you? A 32 years old living alone had some way to support herself, and people don't just quit their jobs overnight because they got pregnant unless it's because they are in a stable relationship and the partner was willing to support them, in which case again moving in with you would not be necessary. You talk about not being financially dependent on him, but now she's financially dependent on you? Why would you agree to allow her to become financially dependent on you, and why would you accept the cost of caring for an adult and her child just because it's your sister? If she is not working, she should absolutely not have the kid, and you should absolutely not be bearing the brunt of her bad decisions. OP, I had quite a few, so I don't believe I read yours, or at least not fully. I answered someone who asked something similar. Yes, she has a job. She moved in with me to save up for her baby. She is on maternity leave. Her job is not super high paying. I am not responding to the rest of the comment as it seems more aggressive than helpful. To a downvoted comment saying that's not how maternity leave works in the US, good thing we are not in the US. Neither the UK. To another, ruder commenter. Yeah, you get 100% of the pay for 6 months, after that 80% or something like that for 6 more months, and I think 50% if you go over a year. Also notice how I said not super high paying. Commenter, I was spit on multiple times growing up because I was a bastard. I received a lot of hate because my brother was an unwed teen mom. Random people, teachers, churchgoers, a good chunk of the so-called family. Small towns suck more than I can say. OP, they go pretty hard in the name of Jesus. Hypocrites of you ask me when asked where OP lives, I won't say. But we are quite religious here. Old women think they are the law and all that. Commenter, holy shit, someone spit on her? What are you people, Amish? OP. Catholic commenter. He appeared at our house, claiming he had left his wife and wanted to be with my sister. Sure, he left his wife after 5 years, coincidentally at the moment she discovered everything. I'm completely sure it's not the wife who dumped him. Per SOOP. I think the same thing. Commenter, your sister really is a piece of work. What did she expect would happen once news of the affair got out? If it weren't for the fact that she's pregnant, I wouldn't have put it past someone to do more than spit at her. The child is going to grow up hated by affair partners, soon to be ex and their children. OOP, I think worse is coming to her. I know our town. That's why she mostly stays in right now. Someone alleges OOP is only blaming the sister and not the affair partner. I blame him. He is a horrible man with no morals. He couldn't even wait for his son to be out of the hospital to start an affair because his ballpark wasn't getting scratched by his wife, who was also in the accident. I hate him. I hate him so badly that I resent that he exists. But he is not in my life. I didn't know him. He has no cards in my game. I am so mad at my sister for not opke fucking up her life but also bringing chaos in mine after I opened my home to her. I am mad she lied to me for 5 years, but most of all, I am disgusted with her horrible selfish actions. She wasn't lured into this. She knew from the beginning that she was a mistress. She knew what she was doing. She knew it was wrong, and yet she kept doing it and lying through her teeth. I don't know who she is. New update. Post, my sister just won't stop talking about him. Every day it's the same story. Their perfect future together, the apartment they're moving into, how everything will be great once his divorce is done. She's completely lost in this delusion, acting like none of the lies and betrayal matter. I can't stand it. She made him write me letters. Yes, actual letters. As if that's going to magically make me approve of him. She leaves them around the house, thinking that if I just read them, I'll suddenly understand how sorry he is and how much he loves her. I haven't responded to a single one. It's ridiculous. I told her over and over that I don't want anything to do with him, but she keeps pushing, as if she can wear me down. It's beyond frustrating. Then came the talk of moving in together. She sat me down and asked for my blessing, telling me how important it was to her that I support their relationship. She actually wanted me to meet him, to give him a chance. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That's when I drew the line. I told her flat out, if she moves in with him, I'm done. I told her I would go low contact, that I wouldn't be part of their life and that she's on her own if she goes through with this. If she wanted my support, she had to leave him, full stop. For a moment, I thought she was finally getting it. She showed me screenshots from his ex-wife. The ex had pretended she wanted him back, and this guy fell for it immediately. He told her how much he missed her. How my sister was a mistake. How he wanted to fix things with his family. My sister was crushed. She came to me with the screenshots, crying, and I thought, for a couple of days, that maybe, just maybe, she would finally see him for who he really is. I was hopeful. But then, as usual, he wormed his way back in. He told her he only said those things because he was afraid his ex would take the kids away, and of course, she bought it. Now she's actively moving in with him, packing up her things and making all these plans like nothing happened. The screenshots. Forgotten. The lies. Excused. She's determined to be with him no matter what, and I'm done. I told her I'm not helping her anymore. No more driving her to appointments. No more checking on her. Nothing. I'm not going to pretend everything's okay while she's diving headfirst into this disaster. Now I barely talk to her. If she asks where the tea is, I'll tell her. If she wants to know if there's milk left, I'll answer. But that's it. I'm emotionally cut off, and I told her straight. I'll be here if things fall apart, if she's in danger, but I am not going to be a part of this train wreck. She's on her own now. The community backlash hasn't slowed down either. Everywhere we go, people are whispering, staring and judging. They're not just looking at her, they're looking at me too. People know she's living with me, and I've started hearing comments at work about why I haven't completely cut her off. It's affecting my life now, and I just can't carry her mistakes anymore. Her friends? All gone. The ones who were married have cut ties completely. She's isolated herself, but instead of waking up, she's clinging harder to him. Holding on to this fantasy that everything will work out. But I'm done caring. She's made her choice, and now she has to live with the fallout. This is the final update because I'm finished. I'm done trying, done caring, done dealing with the mess she's made. She can have her life with him, but I'm not going to be part of it. Some of OOP's comments. Commenter, NTA. Let her be. Kick her out sooner. This started to affect your life more than her. OOP. She is leaving by the 23rd latest. To another commenter. Contracts have been terminated. She is out by the 23rd commenter. She'll lose him as she got him. You'll hear from her in the future when he cheats on her. OOP. I give it 3 months. Commenter. I don't blame you for being over this whole mess. As my mom would say, I won't be shitting out what you eat. Meaning, the consequences of your sister's actions are for her and her alone to deal with. You've been a good sister and done all you can to make her see the error of her ways. Now you just have to let the chips fall where they may. I'm nosy, can you come back and tell us her sob story when she comes crawling back? Oop, I like that idiom. I don't know. Maybe if I need to vent. But I hope that this is the last of my involvement. Commenter. Yeah, last update I predicted things wouldn't change and she would just start affecting you too. And now even indirectly she's affecting you socially. So I know she's not gonna leave without you kicking her out. Hopefully you see that sooner than later. Good luck. OP. I think she is thrilled about leaving to finally be with him. LOL. Commenter. I knew a woman like OP's sister. The man never left his wife. He never got a place with the woman I knew. She's alone. He's still with his wife. OOP. I don't think his wife is taking him back. Commenter. NTA. Your sister is reaching rock bottom. It's now up to her to get out or go further down. It's pathetic she can't face reality, maybe because she intentionally lost everything and everyone because of her selfish choices. For your sake it's best to maintain low to no contact. OOP. It's sad for my nephew. But he has 2 parents now. I am concentrated on my life now. OOP's final thoughts. Commenter. When it happens come back and tell us please. I want to see how things will fall apart. Don't delete your account. Keep just for this, please. OP. I don't think I will. People are seriously unkind. I just got 2 death threats from my DMs. One for being a shifty sister and the other for housing a homewrecker. My husband asked me to flash road workers. I did and he became furious and pushed me out of the car. Was he being a jerk? Original post. Been together 10 years, married for 6. The last 2 or 3 years he's started to show less and less interest in me. He does subscribe to a couple of OnlyFans accounts, which I'm not bothered about as it's no different to porn, so I know he still has sexual urges. I've tried talking to him a couple of times about this and told him I'm getting bored and frustrated and he knows I'm willing to try anything sexual, so if there's anything he wants to do to get him motivated I'll try it. He just says duly noted, and carries on with his day, which is frustrating. A few nights ago we had friends round for tea and we got onto the subject of commutes and roadworks, with them saying how their commute has more than doubled due to a road they use having roadworks. Carol, the wife of the couple, then says we've found a way to make it more entertaining though, haven't we? To her husband, and they both started laughing. She then tells us that the roadworks are about 3 miles long with the groups of workers spread out to maybe 7 or 8 groups, and they are normally going 10 to 15 miles per hour, so when they get near one of the groups he beeps and she flashes them and they all cheer. I couldn't believe it as they seem so straight-laced. That night when they left my husband was saying how brave it is of them and that we should do it the next morning. I asked if he's sure. This is a man who didn't like when I posted a bikini pic on Facebook, and he said yes, and we even had sex that night for the first time in months, and he initiated for the first time in years. The next morning we were both at work and as soon as he woke up he mentioned me flashing. I asked if he's sure and it wasn't just horny talk, and what if the men don't want to be flashed. He said he's sure and all men want to be flashed. We drive to the road and we see a group of workmen and my husband gets all giddy and says, "Are you ready?" I say yes and he says now. And beeps his horn and I lift my top up and they all cheer. We are going about 10 miles per hour when suddenly he slams his brakes on and tells me to get out. I was in shock. His face is red with anger and he's shouting, "Get out you fucking slag." I start crying and he's leaning over me opening my car door and then takes off my seatbelt and starts pushing me out. The cars behind are beeping as he's stopped traffic and he's yelling at the top of his voice. By now the workers have heard the commotion and 2 of them are rushing over to help. I turn to look at them and I do. He pushes me really hard and the top half of my body falls out of the car and I put my hands down. One of the workers is screaming at my husband and starts trying to open his door. The other worker is by me and quickly drags me out of the car. He told me afterwards he saw my husband put the car in gear and thought he was going to drive off with me hanging out the car. My husband just left me. I was still only wearing a vest top and pajama shorts and my slippers as he'd wanted to rush out and do this. My phone was in his car and I didn't have any house keys. One of the workers took his jacket off and wrapped me up in it. They took me to a cabin that was their canteen and put the heater on and made me a cup of tea. I was so embarrassed. This lot had seen my boobs and then seen me getting abused and then fell out of a car and then rescued me all in the space of 30 seconds. I kept apologizing to them and said it was his idea, but they said it's okay and it happens a few times a day and they are used to it, but I think they were just trying to make me feel better. They were laughing and joking with me and were also sweet and funny. They asked if I wanted to ring anyone, but I don't know anyone's number apart from work and I didn't want them picking me up wearing next to nothing from a building site. I asked if I could just ring a taxi, but they said I can't get in a taxi dressed how I am. The man I'm assuming was their team leader told one of them to drive me wherever I wanted to go, so I asked if I could go to my mom's house about 5 miles away. They gave me some spare work boots to walk across the mud to the van and 2 of them drove me to my mom's and they were really sweet and made sure I was okay and even walked me to the front door. When my mom answered I was hysterical and crying and they told her me and my husband had an argument and he left me by the side of the road. My mom offered them a drink and I tried to give them their coat and boots back, but they said it's okay. I told my mom we were driving to McDonald's and got into an argument. I didn't tell her about the pushing or anything. She drove me home and let me in with a spare key she has. I packed some things and went back to my mom's. My husband had been home as my phone was on the table. In the 5 days since he's been ringing me non-stop saying he's sorry and he doesn't know what came over him. He said he heard someone shout, "Nice pair," and it made him angry. My friends are saying leave, he is obviously telling me to give him another chance. I'm 50-50ths, but if I do stay, I'm going to insist on couples counseling for us both and sex therapy either for him or both of us. He says he doesn't want to involve other people in the relationship. It feels silly to throw it all away over a few seconds of madness, and I should have just said no when he asked me to flash, as I know he's quite insecure. I was blinded by finally getting some sex and attention from him and thought I could get more. I took the workers their jackets and boots back and also made them 2 cakes and bought them 1,000 bags of Yorkshire tea as a thank you. TLDR, husband wanted me to flash, I did, He then physically pushed me out of the car but says he's sorry. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. I don't think any relationship advice will do anything to help your situation. Nor will couples counseling. This is definitely the sort of situation where couples counseling will only escalate problematic abusive behavior. What you need, quite frankly, is a divorce lawyer. OOP, that's the thought that's becoming more prevalent in my mind. I took pics of the bruises and scuffs on my arms and legs afterwards, and I kept looking at them and thinking, what would I say to anyone else who showed me them? Commenter 2, you sound codependent on him and do everything he tells you to do to please him, because you are terrified that he will leave you. Now you are in a situation where you did what he told you to do, but he ditched you anyway. He left you on the side of the road to the mercy of strangers that you just flashed with nothing on you. That was very dangerous, and it makes me question if he wanted something to happen to you. This relationship isn't safe for you anymore, and that probably will be for some time. He's abusive. He doesn't want to do couples counseling, because he knows what they would tell you. It isn't wise to do that with him anyway, because all that therapy is going to teach him are more weak points for you to take advantage of. Look for therapy for yourself. You know that he doesn't love you, that's why you accept all these behaviors of him. You can't make him love you by accepting his disrespect. You need to leave. It won't get better, it will get worse. Update. I took people's advice on this sub and a couple of others and rang the police to report the attack. I spoke to the workers beforehand who said they'd back me up. They arrested my husband and then released him on bail but told him he couldn't stay at my house, so he's gone to his mom's. After the argument, he told all our friends that I had cheated. I hadn't wanted to admit to people that I had flashed, but I felt like the tide was really turning against me and a lot of people were believing his lies, so I wrote a long message with a description of exactly what happened. Plus pictures of my injuries including scrapes and bruises, plus screenshots of messages he's sent admitting he asked me to flash, and admitting he hit me, although he did blame me, saying if I just got out like he asked he wouldn't have had to do that. A few people apologized, most didn't, but I don't care anymore. I'm back home and he has to answer bail in a couple of months. The police don't sound confident they can get a conviction, but maybe that's how they are supposed to sound. I've spoken a little bit to a lawyer, but I can't really afford anything at the minute in that way. Been a sad few weeks, but an eye-opener, and I don't feel any guilt for getting the police involved or telling people what happened. Just working and keeping myself busy at the moment. TLDR, I informed the police about the assault and he had to leave my house. Relevant comments. OOP on the workers who rescued her. OOP. Luckily the road worker was a big strong guy. He picked me up and got me out of the way like I was as light as a feather. That's the bit that plays on my mind the most. He drove off a split second after I was out of the car and the door was still open. I think in his mind I was still half in the car when he drove off. Can OP go to a safe place and away from her husband? OP, I don't think I need protection. My brother is staying with me now and he could beat up 10 of my husbands with one hand. Plus I feel like there's more deserving people than me who need a charity's help. OOP telling the police what happened and how they have responded. OP, I did tell the police exactly what happened, as did the workmen. Believe it or not, the police didn't care about me showing flesh and cared more about me getting beaten up and nearly ran over. My half-sister lied, saying I was a call girl and drug dealer, and I got kicked out. Years later, my dad's message on my wedding reopened old wounds. I'm Emma, and I would have laughed a year ago if you had told me that my own family would abandon me. However, that is precisely what took place, and it all began with Leah, my half-sister. Leah has always been dramatic, but I never thought one of her falsehoods would ruin my life. She had to be the center of attention all the time. Even though we were never very close, I made an effort to be a good big sister when I was growing up. Leah was born a few years after our dad remarried when I was 10 years old. She could do no wrong. She was the golden child. She was loved by my father and my stepmother, Margaret, and she understood how to take advantage of it. Leah was skilled at manipulating others, but I was unaware of how far she would go. At first it was subtle. Little remarks about me, such as Emma's acting weird lately, or Emma's been staying out late, would be made by Leah to Dad and Margaret. I'm concerned for her. They didn't give it much thought at first. At the age of 24, I was living alone and attempting to make sense of my post-college life. However, Leah continued to sow doubt, and I was unaware of it until it was too late. My father called me one day. I sensed something was wrong because of the tension in his voice. He said, "We need to talk, Emma. Will you please come over?" Unaware that my entire world was going to fall apart, I went to their house. Margaret appeared to have made up her mind about me when I entered the living room, since she was sitting on the couch with her arms crossed. Leah was also present, but she appeared far too innocent to be the person who had just turned my family against me. Dad wasted little time. I need you to be honest with us about what Leah told us. Do you use drugs? It was so ridiculous that I laughed. What? No, of course not. What is the source of this? Margaret squinted her eyes. Leah reported that during your stay last weekend, she discovered some pills in your room. I went cold. I believed that Leah had not been in my room. Nothing suspicious was ever left there by me. That is untrue. I have no idea what she is discussing. Leah, however, spoke out, her big eyes and phony worry evident. Emma, I have been quite concerned about you, but I didn't want to say anything. I felt you might need help because of the unusual way you've been acting. I gaped in shock as I looked at her. You're telling lies. Never in my life have I used drugs. However, what I stated was irrelevant. The untruth had already been ingrained in their heads by Leah. Margaret and Dad looked at each other, and I knew they trusted her more than I did. The fact that I had never before given them any cause to suspect me was irrelevant. Margaret continued. That's not all. Leah said that you've had relationships with dubious individuals. Are you selling yourself, Emma? It seemed as if someone had hit me. Because of what Leah said, my own stepmother, who had reared me for years, was accusing me of being a prostitute. It was unbelievable to me. No, it's unbelievable that you would even ask me that. Leah is telling lies. Again though, it didn't feel like my words mattered. They were entangled in the web that Leah had spun. Dad continued. Emma, in a softer tone now, as if he wanted to believe me but was unable to. All we want to do is assist you. We must know if you are in difficulties. I'm not having any problems. With tears in my eyes, I screamed. Leah is deceiving you. Leah gave me a wide-eyed stare while continuing to play the innocent victim. I'm only attempting to assist you, Emma. I don't want you to become involved in negative situations like some of my pals did. I was unable to bear to look at her. You're intentionally doing this, I spit out. You wish for them to despise me. Margaret got to her feet. That's sufficient, Emma. We can't trust you unless you can be truthful with us. We must step back, even if we love you. Step back. They were expressing that they no longer wanted me around. That day, I felt numb when I left the house. Leah's falsehoods had caused my own family, who were meant to support me, to turn against me. I was at a loss for what to do. My mother lived across the nation, and although she believed me, there wasn't much she could do from such a distance. Worst of all, Leah continued to embellish her lies. She began spreading tales about me being a drug addict across the town. After hearing the rumors, my supervisor fired me because he didn't want an untrustworthy employee. My friends stopped phoning, and I felt even more alone. I lost everything because of Leah's lies, my reputation, my career and my family. She was enjoying the attention as I was in a downward spiral. Whenever I attempted to approach her, she reframed the situation so that I appeared to be the unstable one. When Dad contacted me again to inform me that they no longer wanted me around, it was the last straw. It's best if you stay away, Emma, until you can get help. You must not be around Leah. She has endured enough. Had enough? In their perspective, Leah was the victim, even though I had lost everything. I was finished. In an attempt to start again, I packed up my belongings and relocated to a different city. However, the harm was already done. I wasn't sure whether my relationship with my family could ever be restored once it was destroyed. Months passed, and each time I considered contacting them, I recalled their initial reaction. As if I were a complete stranger rather than their daughter. For that, I couldn't forgive them and I couldn't forgive Leah either. However, as time went on, I started to question whether Leah's actions were more complex. What type of individual would ruin someone's life by lying like that? Was she experiencing something more serious than jealousy? I had to move on with my life, with or without them, so it didn't really matter anymore. The agony of losing my family still aches a year after everything fell apart, even though I've been able to restore some of what I lost. I'm not sure if they'll ever expose Leah's deceit or if I'll ever be able to trust them again. One thing is certain though, they will have to confront the reality of Leah's true nature if they ever hope to have me back in their life. Holding my breath is not an option. It only grew worse after the altercation with my family. I made an effort to move on, but it wasn't that easy. The wound from the betrayal festered and got deeper every day. My life was tainted by Leah's falsehoods, and I was unable to avoid the repercussions. Not only did I lose my friends and work, but I also lost my identity. The final betrayal occurred when my father kicked me out of the house, challenging everything I believed to be true about myself. I can still clearly remember the day it happened. Desperate to convince my father of the truth, I had returned to his home. Perhaps if I calmly and directly explained everything to him, he would comprehend. I wanted to think that the father who reared me was still inside of him, the father who taught me how to ride a bike, who used to support me at soccer matches, and who always emphasized the importance of family comes first. I wanted my father to be like that again. However, I could feel the tension in the air as soon as I went through the door. Margaret was sitting with her arms folded in the kitchen, looking at me as if I were a nasty object that needed to be removed. Naturally, Leah was not present, but I knew she was there, most likely listening in the background while she waited for everything to fall apart the way she always desired. With a harsh expression on his face, my father stood at the kitchen counter as though he had already decided before I had a chance to say anything. I said, attempting to speak steadily, "Dad, we need to talk. You must hear my side of the story." The hush that followed his delayed response was oppressive. My heart was thumping louder in my throat with every second that went by. He sighed at last. "Emma, I'm not sure if I have anything more to say. You've been granted time. We have attempted to assist. You haven't assisted me at all." With a trembling voice, I shot back. "All you've heard is Leah. I can verify that everything she has told you is false. Just listen to me, please." I could feel Margaret's judgment stabbing me as she shook her head. "We've heard enough, Emma. Leah has just been worried for you and you haven't done anything to disprove her." I became so frustrated that I was unable to contain it any longer. "Leah is lying out of jealousy. This is how she receives the attention she has always desired. Do you not see? She's playing tricks on you." However, my words were ignored. My father's face remained unchanged. He wasn't even taking into account my version of events. "This isn't good for you or Leah," he stated in a quiet but forceful voice. "Emma, I believe it would be best if you stopped visiting, at least until you received assistance." "Ask for assistance." Incredulous, I repeated. "You believe that I am the one in need of assistance? Nothing has gone wrong on my end. You're tossing me out because of Leah's falsehoods, even though I'm not selling myself or using drugs." My dad's eyes become stony. "This hostility in the house is unacceptable. I apologize, but you must go." Margaret's lips formed a narrow line as she nodded in agreement. "It's best that way." Stunned, I stood there. It was this. I was their own kid, and they were choose Leah's lies above me. I had the impression that everything I had ever done for them, every loving moment, every memory we had together, was being instantly obliterated. I gave my father one last glance in the hopes that he might change his mind or show some glimmer of hesitation. However, nothing was present. I couldn't find him. Without saying another word, I turned and walked out, slamming the door behind me with tears in my eyes. A final brutal punctuation to the life I had known, the sound reverberated in my mind. The initial months following expulsion were a haze of hopelessness. While I was trying to put my life back together, I moved in with a friend named Jessica, who graciously allowed me to rest on her couch. But despite my best efforts to divert my attention, I was unable to get rid of the sense of abandonment. My chest ached every time I saw a family in the park or heard someone talk about their parents. Leah's actions of turning everyone I cared about against me were on my mind constantly. Jessica made an effort to be encouraging, but it was clear that she didn't completely get what I was going through. One evening, as we sat on her small balcony, she said, "Perhaps you should just get in touch with them again. By now they might have calmed down. You could." "No," I cut in, my tone acrid. "I'm not wanted by them. They were quite explicit about that." She gave me a pitying glance, but I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. I knew she wanted to help, but you can't truly comprehend what it's like to have your family turn against you, to be deceived by those who are meant to love you without conditions, unless you've been there yourself. It wasn't easy, but I tried to reconstruct my life over the next 5 years. Even in the new city, the rumors that Leah disseminated had followed me. There were whispers about me. I applied for employment, but every time I was turned down, it felt like another nail in the coffin of who I was before. People's perceptions of me changed. They thought I was broken and unreliable. Then, almost 2 years after my expulsion, an unforeseen circumstance occurred. I was working at a little cafe on a Saturday afternoon. Even though it wasn't my ideal career, working as a barista was a reliable job that helped me pay my bills. A man entered when I was cleaning the counter. Although he had a somewhat familiar appearance, I was unable to identify him. He paused before asking, "Emma?" Curious, I turned to him. "Yeah?" He gave a clumsy smile. "I doubt that you recall me. I'm Leah's Dylan." When Leah's name was spoken, my stomach fell. Dylan. God, I now recalled him. When we were younger, he had dated Leah for a couple of years. Around the time Leah began spreading those stories about me, they broke up. Why on earth was he in this place? All I wanted to do was turn and leave, But I mustered a kind grin. "Oh, Dylan, I see. What's going on?" He raked a hand through his hair and shifted uneasily. "I realize this may seem strange, but I've been intending to speak with you for some time. After everything that has transpired, I simply need to clear my conscience, even if I wasn't sure if I should." I arched an eyebrow. "Clear your conscience?" He seemed truly sorry as he sighed. "It has to do with Leah and what she said about you. The prostitution and the drugs were all lies." My throat tightened each breath. It felt more genuine after hearing it from someone else who knew Leah well. I answered, "I know that," in a tone that was colder than I had intended. "But my family doesn't." Dylan looked at the floor and nodded. "I apologize, I understand. I should have spoken out sooner, but I was unaware of the extent to which she would take it. She had her problems, Leah. Emma, she was always envious of you. I believe that's the reason she did it." I gazed at him, attempting to comprehend his words. "Jealous of what?" "You," stated Dylan plainly. "You had your own life, were older, and were more self-reliant. Even if you were unaware of it, Leah always felt as though she was living in your shadow. She wanted attention, and when she saw that making you appear terrible would get it, she went for it. She told me about it after our breakup, although I was unaware of its full scope at the time. Despite her shame, she was unsure of how to stop. My mind was racing. Had Leah acknowledged it? Had she really admitted to fabricating it all? And Dylan had been aware all along. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Anger rising within me, I demanded. This could have been avoided by you. Years ago my family could have learned the truth. Dylan repeated. I'm sorry, in a low voice. I had no idea how. Leah has a way of making people question themselves, and I didn't think they would trust me. She also played with my head. Barely believing what I was hearing, I shook my head. Was jealousy the ultimate cause of all the suffering and heartache Leah had caused? That's why I was expelled by my father. That's why I lost everything in my life, my career, my family. Dylan waited for me to say something. But I was at a loss for words. I was no longer even able to look at him. I was only angry. I murmured, you should go, and turned my back on him. He repeated, Emma, I'm really sorry, one final time before slipping out of the cafe. I tried to stabilize myself as the weight of everything fell on me while I stood there clutching the counter. My life had been ruined by Leah's falsehoods, and it was all because she was envious. Finally, years later, I knew the truth. Now though, what good was it? I kept thinking about approaching Leah after that day. My anger was unlike anything I had ever felt before. It engulfed me, recreating every moment of betrayal and keeping me up at night. I was looking for answers. I wanted her to confess what she had done to everyone, including our father and me. Dylan had told me about Leah's deception years ago. I initially believed that learning the truth would bring some sort of closure, but it just served to reignite old hurts. I didn't need their apologies, especially not just now, because I had constructed my life without my family's love and support. For the first time in a long time, I was in a good place. More importantly, I had found someone who embraced me for who I was, without the baggage of my history, and I had a new career that I loved. Marketing for a nonprofit. 2 years ago, Noah and I met through common acquaintances, and things felt natural as soon as we spoke. He saw me, Emma, as the person I had become in spite of everything, without interfering in my family life or criticizing me for the strained ties. I thought my life was finally coming together again when Noah proposed. We were preparing a modest, low-key wedding. I didn't require a lavish party. It was important that we begin our new life together and create a family free from deceit and treachery. Life wasn't that easy, of course. It had been years since I had spoken to Margaret or my father. I severed all connections after they expelled me. I blocked them on social media, switched cities, and updated my phone number. Occasionally, I would learn through rumors that they wanted to know how I was doing, but I never answered. I remained silent even after Dylan came clean. How would I respond? That they blindly trusted Leah and believed a lie about me, their own daughter, and that I had to suffer as a result. For that I couldn't forgive them. Then, around 6 months into the planning of our wedding, I received an unexpected email. My father gave it to me. I opened the screen after staring at it for a very long time. As I read his words, my pulse raced in my chest. Since you departed, Emma, you have been on my mind every single day. I can't express how sorry I am for all that has transpired, and I know we made a grave error by choosing to believe Leah over you. Margaret and I want to put things right because we miss you more than words can express. I've heard that you're getting married via a pal. As I've always dreamed, I would adore being there to accompany you down the aisle, Give me an opportunity to express my regret, Emma. With trembling hands I set down my phone. Did he wish to apologize? After all these years. He wanted to make amends after what they had done to me. I couldn't stop thinking about it for days. Noah asked me what was going on after noticing that I was preoccupied, but I was at a loss for words. I hadn't told him anything that had transpired with my family. Although he was aware of their absence from my life, he was unaware of the depth of the betrayal. It felt almost like another lifetime since I had buried it so deeply. I finally sat Noah down one evening and told him everything, including about Leah, my father, and Margaret, and how they had abandoned me when I most needed them. I informed him about Dylan's confession and how I still couldn't forgive them despite knowing the truth. With a contemplative expression on his face, Noah listened patiently without pressuring me to make a choice. There is nothing you owe them, he added quietly. You are free to choose not to have them at the wedding. Emma, this is your day. Our future is at stake, not the past. I was reassured by his remarks, but they didn't help me decide. Even though I knew my family would never be the same, I still felt a part of me miss them. I wanted my father to be present on one of the most significant days of my life, to escort me down the aisle. However, could I truly pardon them for their actions? I finally responded to my father's email 1 week later. I told him that although I was grateful for the apology, I wasn't prepared to move on. The devastation was too great. However, I was willing to allow him to attend the wedding if he realized that our relationship would never be the same. Margaret and Leah weren't invited. There was no negotiating that. My phone rang 2 days after I sent that email. Even though I didn't recognize the number, I felt compelled to take it up. My father's voice was tremulous and emotional as he said, Emma. At first I remained silent. I waited for him to say something, just listening. At last, he said, I received your email. I'm thrilled that you'll allow me to attend the wedding, but I must beg. Will you not extend an invitation to Leah? My stomach turned over. I could see where this was headed. No, father, Leah is not invited? You understand why. The person on the other end of the line paused for a while. His breathing was audible as he deliberated over his next sentence. She's your sister, Emma. She is still family. Even though I know what she did was horrible. Since then, she has matured significantly. She wants to make amends and is remorseful for what she done. I could sense my old wrath building. Leah ruined my life, Dad. You and Margaret blindly believed her lies, and I lost everything as a result. She cannot simply attend my wedding and act as like nothing is wrong. I get that, he responded in a beseeching tone. However, this is an opportunity for us to reunite and begin our family's healing process. If Leah isn't at your wedding, I can't attend. It wouldn't be appropriate. I went cold, a command. On my wedding day, he was threatening to not attend unless I included the guy who destroyed my life. Are you serious at this moment? My voice was thick with incredulity as I asked. Emma, I'm not kidding. I can't abandon Leah, even though I want to be there for you because I love you. She is also my daughter. I had the feeling that I would get sick. Are you really going to pick her over me once more? My voice quivered with anger as I asked. You're still supporting her in spite of everything that's happened? It's not about sides, he shouted frantically. It has to do with family. We must unite. No, I responded in a hard, icy tone. We wanted you to be there for me when I needed you. You didn't. And now you're attempting to spoil my happiness once more. Please don't do this, Emma, he pleaded. This can be fixed. No, we can't, Dad. My hand trembled as I hung up. My eyes were watering, but I fought the need to cry. I refused to let him, Leah, or anybody else ruin this day. To get here, I had had to fight too hard. It was bittersweet in the months before the wedding. On the one hand, I was getting married to my soulmate. My father, on the other hand, would not be present. Even though I stuck by my decision, it still stung. I secretly hoped that he would pick me, that he would see how much suffering he had caused by supporting Leah all those years ago. However, he didn't. He was unable to. I made an effort to concentrate on the positive aspects, such as selecting the ideal outfit, deciding on the food, and selecting flowers with my maid of honor, Rachel. Throughout it all, Noah was encouraging and never pushed me to bring Leah or my father. He saw that this wedding was not about the shattered remnants of my past, but rather about us and our future. Nevertheless, I couldn't help but feel the weight of my family's absence as the day drew near. My mom lived across the country, and we were no longer close, so I knew she couldn't make it. Although I didn't hold it against her, her attempt to maintain her objectivity during the whole situation with Leah caused a gulf between us that we were never able to fully close. Rachel threw me a tiny bachelorette party the night before the wedding. Just some nice laughter, lots of wine and a few close friends. I was able to put everything else aside and simply have fun for a few hours. However, once the party ended and my friends departed, I was left sitting by myself in my apartment, gazing at my own wedding invitation. Even though I knew my father wouldn't show up, I had mailed him one. A part of me wanted to tear it up, to completely remove him from my life. However, another part of me, possibly the one that still missed the family I lost, was unable to do it. When the wedding day finally came, it was just as I had imagined. As Noah and I stood at the altar with our selected family and friends, the sun shone and the air was warm, and I felt at ease. My decision had been the right one. My dad wasn't present. Leah wasn't either. And I wasn't burdened by their absence for the first time. They weren't necessary for me to prove that I was happy and that I had moved on. It was sufficient that I had discovered my own happiness and my own family. I experienced a sense of closure as Noah and I exchanged vows, not the type that comes from reconciliation or forgiveness, but rather from making your own decisions and accepting that some scars cannot be healed. I felt liberated as we danced beneath the stars following the wedding. I had allowed the hurt of my family's betrayal to define me for a very long time, but now that I was standing next to Noah, I realized that my past did not dictate my future. Nothing, not Leah, not my father, not anyone, could take away the love and trust I had forged in my new existence. I felt whole for the first time in years. The day of the wedding had been ideal. I felt at peace for the first time in years as Noah and I stood at the altar. It was the start of a new chapter in my life, one free from the heartache, deceit, and betrayals of the past. For the first time, I gave myself permission to think that I could create a life without my family's shadow. However, reality struck in as Noah and I returned from our brief honeymoon in the days after the wedding. I felt burdened by my choice to sever my relationship with Margaret, Leah, and my father. They hadn't offered an apology or a last-minute request for pardon. By refusing to invite Leah and refusing to back down when my father gave me his ultimatum, I had made it plain that I was done. However, after you make those choices, the world doesn't end. Individuals change, and occasionally they spiral. 2 months or so after the wedding, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. My blood raced cold when I heard the message after I had left it on voicemail. "This is Margaret, Emma, please give me a call back. It's Leah. She's in the medical facility. She attempted self-harm. Emma, please, we need you." I went cold. Leah had attempted suicide. I felt sick to my stomach for a moment. The sister that had destroyed my life, lied about me, and split up my family, Leah, was in the hospital after attempting suicide. I suppressed the guilt that washed over me. I was not at blame for this. I wasn't accountable for Leah's decisions. She had made them on her own. Nevertheless, it troubled me that Margaret had contacted me and begged me to come. In an attempt to determine Margaret's tone, I listened to the voicemail once more. Was it a desperate move? Fear? Feeling guilty? I had no idea. She was urging me to return to the mess I had worked so hard to escape, even though I hadn't spoken to her since I had gone. At last, I plucked up the confidence to tell Noah as he was in the kitchen preparing dinner. I said as neutrally as possible, "I got a voicemail from Margaret. Leah is in the medical facility. She attempted self-harm." His forehead was wrinkled with worry as he looked up from the stove. "What was it she said? Is Leah all right?" I acknowledged. They didn't give much detail. Margaret immediately asked me to come to the hospital after saying she was there. She sounded frantic. After wiping his hands on a towel, Noah approached me and put a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "How are you going to proceed?" "Uncertain," I shrugged. "I'm not sure. After years of attempting to escape them all and the harm they inflicted, I feel as though I'm being pulled back into it. I'm not sure if I can make it." Noah spoke in a soft yet forceful tone. "You owe them nothing, Emma. Your family made their decisions and Leah made hers. You are not accountable for her or her fate." Even though his statements confirmed what I was thinking, it didn't help me decide. There was a part of me that felt obligated, the part that still remembered Leah as the young child I had once attempted to be a big sister to. However, my logical side, which had established a life free of their poison, understood I couldn't turn back. I stayed up that night reliving the things that had brought us all to this point. The years of manipulation, the lies told by Leah, and the numerous times my father had picked her over me. With Leah in such a vulnerable state, was it really possible for me to return to their life at this point? What would that achieve? I considered the potential consequences of actually visiting the hospital. How would I respond? Would they want me to overlook Leah's suffering because she was in a horrible position and forgive her? What if I wasn't able to forgive her? What would happen if I went and it made things worse? I decided what I would do the following morning. I had no intention of going. I could tell Noah was worried, but he was on my side. "Are you certain?" he inquired. "I don't want you to come to regret this." I tried to persuade myself as much as he did, saying, "I'm sure. Leah got here because of her decisions. I've wasted too much time attempting to make things right that weren't my responsibility. I refused to be coerced into returning by their guilt. I didn't call Margaret back as a result. I chose not to visit the hospital. I stayed away because I preferred the tranquility I had battled so hard to the mayhem my family constantly brought." I got another message a few weeks later, this time from my dad. His voice was something I had not heard since the wedding ultimatum. "It's Dad, Emma. I can see why you might be upset, but Leah is now in treatment and I believe it would be very meaningful for her if you came to see her. She is receiving assistance. She is attempting to atone for her actions and has acknowledged what she done. I realize this is a lot to ask, but perhaps it's time for the family to begin mending. Please give it some thought." I didn't respond, so I erased the mail. Leah was in treatment. My father said she was seeking assistance and confessing to all she did. However, I was wise enough to avoid becoming entangled in that web again. Even if Leah was making amends now, it didn't negate what she had done to me. She had been manipulating others for years. The years of harm and the reality that my family had deserted me when I most needed them were not undone by it. I got additional messages in the weeks that followed. Margaret called multiple times and left heartfelt, lengthy voicemails expressing their desire to reunite as a family and how Leah was getting better. To give Leah a chance, my father texted me to come see her in the rehab center, but I consistently ignored him. I had already decided. About 6 months after Leah's suicide attempt, I happened to run into Dylan one afternoon. It came as a complete surprise. On a bright Saturday, Noah and I were having lunch when I noticed him across the street. At the same moment he noticed me and he approached before I could dodge him. "Emma," he murmured with a startled tone. "I was surprised to see you here." A rush of unease washed over me as I attempted a grin. Since Dylan told me about Leah's falsehoods years ago, I hadn't seen him. It felt weird to see him now, after everything. "Yeah, just out with Noah," I said, nodding to my husband, who was observing us from the cafe table with interest. After a little pause, Dylan resumed his conversation. "I'm not trying to bother you, but have you heard anything about Leah?" I tensed up. "Enough has been said," he went on, disregarding the icy tone in my voice. "She's in rehab. Emma, she's making a sincere effort. She has now acknowledged everything, even though I know she damaged you. Perhaps she is resolving her problems." I interjected, my voice hard. "Dylan, stop. I'm glad she's receiving assistance, but it doesn't make a difference in my opinion. I've moved on." Dylan's eyes were a mix of grief and pity as he gazed at me. "I truly understand. However, Emma, individuals can change. Perhaps Leah is attempting to make amends." I became impatient and yelled, "I don't need her amends. I have no obligation to her. Her falsehoods caused me to suffer for years. Because she feels bad, I won't allow her back into my life at this time." Dylan let out a sigh, obviously understanding that he couldn't make me change my decision. "All right, I simply felt you ought to be aware." I wanted the talk to stop, so I nodded. "I appreciate you telling me." Before leaving, he offered me a melancholy little smile. After observing him leave, Noah turned to face me. "Are you all right?" Even though I wasn't positive, I nodded. Dylan had reminded me of past pains and memories, but I wasn't going to allow it to take me back there. I said, "I'm fine," attempting to put the encounter behind me. "All I want to do is concentrate on us and our lives." The texts from Margaret and my father became less frequent over time. I didn't care that Leah had finished her time in rehab and seemed to be doing well. I had decided to permanently cut them off, and I had no intention of changing my mind. Late at night, I would occasionally ponder what my life could have been like if my father had never believed Leah and she had never told those falsehoods. Would our family still exist? Would the course of events have been different? However, those sentiments were short-lived, and I consistently ignored them. With Noah, I now had my own family. For me, it was sufficient that we were creating a life together free from the poisonous dynamics of my past. The calls eventually ceased completely. Despite their entreaties, my father and Margaret must have recognized that I was not returning. Leah also appeared to realize that she couldn't repair what she had damaged. So I put the past behind me, where it belonged, and moved on. My stepfather's temptation could destroy everything, and my mom has no idea what's happening between us. Have you ever kept a secret that may destroy everything because it was so risky and enticing? That was my existence, and the secret I kept was as illegal as the subsequent sinister cravings. This is my story, and my name is Isabel. Something inside of me changed the night following my 18th birthday, and now that I'm 19, it all began. This is not what I asked for. Victor wasn't someone I asked for. But here I am, speaking the truth to you. I need to get it off my chest, even if I'm not proud of it. My stepfather, Victor, was no ordinary man. With just a glance, he was able to command the room and exert a silent authority over others. I knew there was something sinister about him from the time he married my mother. However, I believed that danger was not intended for me. Like a breeze that gradually develops into a storm, it started off so innocently. I have a clear memory of that evening. The house was silent and it was late. The only sounds were the waves breaking outside, as though the sea was aware of the mayhem that was developing inside of me. My mother didn't realize the tension was rising below. She was sleeping upstairs. When I arrived downstairs, Victor was seated at the kitchen table, wearing a flimsy robe that hardly fit me. I convinced myself that I wasn't attempting to impress him. However, the slow, methodical manner his eyes followed me gave the impression that he saw me in a way that no one else had. At first, he merely watched without saying anything. Even though it was unsettling, I couldn't help myself. His eyes were heavy and seductive, and something dark and terrible sprang up inside of me at that very moment. As though the room itself could sense the change in our dynamic, the air between us was heavy and nearly oppressive. Then he said, "You're up late," in a low, nearly growling voice. As if daring me to step beyond an unseen line from which none of us could return, his words lingered in the air like a challenge. I said, I couldn't sleep, as my heart began to race. My feet remained set despite knowing I should leave, defying the logic that was screaming in my head. He grinned, but it was a smile that aroused something deep inside me rather than reaching his eyes. "Spend some time sitting with me, keep me company." I paused, but only briefly. The table felt like a thin wall separating two worlds, one familiar and comfortable, the other unfamiliar and perilous, and before I realized it, I was seated across from him. His fingers brushed mine as his hand went over the table. Even though the touch was fleeting, it made me quiver. It was plenty to make me gasp for air and to get me to doubt every single barrier I believed I had. He said, "I've been watching you," in a softer, more personal tone. I didn't pull away as his fingers lingered for a second longer than they should have. "You're not a little girl anymore, Isabel." My chest was thumping with my heart. I ought to have said something, anything at all, but I was stuck in this weird, perverse moment. His words and the way he gazed at me conveyed a sense of both fear and excitement, as if I were more than simply his stepdaughter and no longer invisible. I was afraid because I was something more. The tension-filled stillness that lingered between us was a result of unsaid wishes seething beneath the surface. My thinking begged me to flee and to put an end to whatever it was before it got out of control. However, my body ignored me. Despite my knowledge that it was improper, I felt a strong attraction to him. "Does it scare you?" As if he could read the struggle brewing within me, he inquired in a voice so silky it was practically a whisper. "The way I look at you?" I tightened my throat and swallowed hard. I was unable to respond. Rather, I found myself standing and moving toward him around the table as though I were unable to escape some unseen force. As I got closer, his body tensed and his eyes darkened. The heat of his presence and the way the air between us seemed to vibrate with expectation caused me to stop a few inches from him. I felt a shock of electricity as his hand extended and brushed across my arm's sensitive flesh. My body betrayed me once more, and I let out a quiet gasp. Even when I muttered, "You know this can't happen," I didn't believe myself. A different story was revealed by the way I shuddered under his touch. He whispered, "And yet here you are." As his hand moved up my arm and settled on my shoulder, I felt my body lean into his touch as his thumb touched the side of my neck, seeking it in a manner I couldn't quite put my finger on. I tried to ignore the guilt that was eating at me by closing my eyes, but it didn't help. I had gone too far. My heart was pounding, my breathing was shallow, and I could feel his hot, seductive breath on my skin. I wanted to halt. I had to quit. However, I was unable to. With his lips so close to mine that I could just taste the forbidden, he said, "What do you want, Isabel?" I opened my eyes and looked him in the eye. The same yearning that boiled within me was seen in his eyes. But before I could respond, the moment was cut short by the sound of footsteps coming from upstairs. Mom was up. I took a step back, the reality of what nearly happened rushing down around me, my heart thumping in my chest. Victor flashed a sly smile, as though he had just won a devious game. He got up and brushed by me, his hand caressing my waist as he went. "We should talk again sometime," he muttered. The moment was over in an instant. However, the fire he had kindled within me was unquenchable. "And you, how would you respond if I were you? Would you walk away or give in to temptation? Tell us what you think in the comments section below. I need to understand that I'm not alone in feeling torn between good and wrong. I couldn't get that night out of my head. I wasn't sure I could resist the way Victor's breath brushed across my lips and the way his touch shot sparks through my skin. The power he had over me, a subtle unsaid authority that both scared and made me feel alive, was more than simply the physical. And we started playing the game seriously after that evening. Days went by, and on the surface, everything appeared to be as usual. My mother was blissfully oblivious, as though she was unaffected by the tension in the air. However, every look, every word and every moment we shared became electrified between Victor and me. It was approaching something that neither of us could stop, like a slow-burning fuse. I made an effort to stay away from him, telling myself that it was the proper course of action. I spent more time in my room, concentrated on my coursework, or went to the beach to get some fresh air and let the sound of the waves soothe my mind. But the memory of his touch followed me everywhere like an unseen hand. Things got out of hand on a Saturday afternoon. Victor and I were left alone while my mother left for some errands in town. I had promised myself that I would remain in my room, stay away from him, and maintain my normalcy. However, as the hours passed, the house's silence tormented me, and the more I considered it, the more I found myself straying downstairs, attracted to the peril like a moth to a flame. He was reading a newspaper in the living room as if nothing had ever transpired between us. However, I could sense him. Every part of me knew about him. I remained there with my heart pounding, not sure if I should approach him or head back upstairs. But my body had already decided and was moving in closer. He continued, "I see you've come out of hiding," in a calm voice that had a tinge that made my heart race. I could tell he felt me even though his gaze remained fixed on the newspaper. "Is this the way things will be going forward, Isabel? Me chasing, you running?" I tried to say, "I'm not running," but my voice deceived me. We were both aware that I was lying. "Really?" Now, his tone was playful, as though he were challenging me to tell the truth. When he eventually lowered the newspaper and met my gaze, the magnetic force between us returned with greater vigor than before. "Because it seems like that's exactly what you've been doing." I started to reply, but the words became stuck in my throat. Rather, I simply stood there and gazed at him, feeling the gravity of the situation increase. My mind cried out for me to get out, to return upstairs, and to stop this risky game before it continued. However, my body had other ideas. With his gaze fixed on mine, Victor reclined in his chair. He whispered, "Come here." But it wasn't a request. It was a command, and I felt a shock of energy. After a brief moment of hesitation, I moved forward. I was unable to stop myself. I was unwilling to stop. As I walked toward him, my heart thumping louder with every step, the space felt too small and too hot. When I got close enough, he extended his hand and ran it up my arm, causing my skin to tingle from the heat of his touch. Breathless, I waited there, anticipating the next move. After that, he carefully and slowly drew me onto his lap. The way his hand slid over me and the feel of his body beneath mine was seductive, even though I knew it was wrong. My entire body was ablaze, with every nerve begging for more. Even so, a tiny voice in the back of my mind kept reminding me of the repercussions and that my mother was only a few miles away and was totally unaware of the treachery taking place right in front of her. "What are we doing?" I didn't know if I wanted an answer, so I whispered. Victor's lips touched my ear as his hands closed tighter around my waist. His breath was hot against my skin as he whispered, "Exactly what you want." His fingers moved slowly in circles around my exposed skin as they slid under the hem of my shirt, giving me chills with every touch. My body betrayed me once more as I leaned toward him when I should have stopped him and backed away. I felt my breath catch as his hands rose higher and his fingertips touched the curvature of my waist. The distinction between right and wrong became hazy, and my only thought was how wonderful it felt to be wanted and caressed in this way. I began to say, "We can't." But my words were halting and unconvincing. Already I was leaning into him, wanting and needing more. He pressed his lips to my neck and said, "We already are," which caused my veins to boil up. My body shook with anticipation as I let out a faint gasp as his fingers crept lower, hinting at the border of the forbidden. But before anything further could happen, there was a knock on the door. The moment broke as we both froze. Panic was coursing through my veins as my heart raced. My mom couldn't have returned by now, could she? With a dark, menacing flicker in his eyes, Victor's hand slipped away from me. "Go," he urged softly. his tone calm yet forceful, as though nothing unusual had just occurred. Upstairs. Now. I refrained from arguing. With my legs shaking, I leaped from his lap and rushed back to my room, my thoughts racing. With my heart racing and the realization of what nearly transpired weighing heavily on me, I closed the door behind me. I tried to quiet the roaring tempest of emotions inside of me by pressing my back against the door and breathing heavily. There was still heat between us, simmering beneath the surface, waiting to burst at the next chance. How would you have responded? Remaining or walking away? I don't even know what I'm doing anymore, so please let me know in the comments. Even though I made an effort to suppress it, the guilt kept eating away at me. I kept thinking about Victor's hands on me and the fire between us whenever I was by myself. As if he knew precisely how to pull me apart, I would close my eyes and feel his breath on my neck and the way his fingers had moved over my flesh. I felt alive, even powerful, but that strength had a cost, and I wasn't prepared to pay it. My mother had no suspicions. Unaware of the chaos simmering beneath the surface, she continued to live her days with the same radiant smile. I saw that I was avoiding her more and more and stayed away from her whenever I could. I didn't want her to ask me questions I couldn't answer or see the shame in my eyes. I was too terrified to witness the extent of the harm that would be caused when the truth ultimately exploded because it was a ticking time bomb. The situation worsened once more on a Sunday afternoon. Victor and I were alone again since my mom had gone to see a friend across town. Since that day in the living room, the air between us had become more dense. Every interaction was a game we were both playing and neither of us had the guts to stop, a quiet challenge. I pretended to read while I sat on the back porch, but my gaze kept going to the open door behind me. I could feel him, the weight of his presence raising the hair on the back of my neck, and I knew he was inside. With him so near, I was unable to concentrate as my fingers fumbled with the pages. I knew it was him before I even turned when the door cracked open. He went outside, moving slowly and deliberately, as though he wanted me to have time to respond. With every stride he took toward me, my pulse quickened and my heart raced. "Isabel," he said in a quiet, nearly whispery voice, as though we were exchanging secrets. We were, in a sense. I swallowed hard and put the book down without giving him a glance. I was unable to. I knew I wouldn't be able to control myself if I did. He said, "We need to talk," as he approached and cast his shadow over me. Instead of taking a seat, he simply stood there, looming over me like some evil entity against which I was powerless. I managed to say, "I don't think that's a good idea," though my voice was a little shaky. He knelt next to me, so close I could feel the heat emanating from his body. "You know we can't pretend this didn't happen." My breath caught in my throat as I finally turned to face him. Something I couldn't identify but sensed deep within me was visible in his black eyes. It was more than just desire. It was dangerous. It was the excitement of knowing that we were tinkering with fire and that we dared to allow it to devour us. I said, "I'm not pretending." But I knew it was a lie as soon as I said it. Victor's fingertips touched my skin in a way that made me shiver as he reached out and brushed a lock of hair away from my face. "Don't you sense it? This is between us. It won't go away." I ought to have gotten up, left and put an end to this before things got out of hand. However, I remained motionless, my body deceiving me once more. His presence was overwhelming, and his touch was electric. Even though I knew I would get burned, I couldn't help but be pulled to him like a moth to a flame. "Victor!" My voice trembled with a mixture of excitement and dread, barely audible. His breath was hot against my ear as he leaned closer. He muttered, "Tell me to stop," as his lips touched my flesh. "Tell me you don't want this." I ought to have said it. I ought to have told him to stop and go away. However, I didn't. I was unable to. As an alternative, I turned to face him, our lips almost touching. The tension between us was heavy and intolerable, and my heart was thumping in my chest. The words, "I can't," escaped my lips before I could stop them. I was pulled to my feet by Victor's hand as it moved down my arm and wrapped around my wrist. He held on tight. Standing so close that our bodies nearly touched, he held me there. As the attraction between us took hold, the outside world appeared to fade into the background. He said, "You don't want me to stop," in a confident tone, as though he knew me better than I did. "You've been considering it. It's visible in your eyes." My breath came in short spurts as I bit my lip. I detested his accuracy and ability to read me. I thought about him, what we could do and what we had already done whenever we were alone. The urge was stronger than anything I had ever experienced, yet the guilt was still present. I was drawn closer when Victor's hand moved to my waist. His body was pushed against mine, and I could feel the searing heat between us. He teased, taunted, and dared me to give in as his lips lingered over mine. My body desired this, but my head and heart were screaming for me to leave. This is what I wanted. He whispered, "Tell me what you want, Isabel." His lips grazing mine, just barely touching. I was unable to talk. My mind was racing with contradictory feelings and my throat felt constricted. I had no choice but to lean into him, close my eyes, and wait for the inevitable to come. However, a car pulled into the driveway before our lips could touch. The truth of what we were going to do hit me like a tidal wave, and I jerked away as my eyes snapped open. My mom was at home. Victor took a step back, his expression unreadable. The fire between us remained, simmering just below the surface, waiting for the next opportunity to explode, even though the time was past. If you were in my position, how would you respond? Would you turn away or allow yourself to sink further? Tell me in the comments below. I must understand that I am not alone in this problem. Long after the moment was over, I could still feel the heat of his touch. The tension between us was intensifying and taking over every silent moment, every look and every word spoken in private. In an exciting and terrifying way, Victor had a way of making me feel needed and seen. And suddenly the distinction between good and wrong became increasingly hazy with every day that went by. Everything changed that night. Victor and I were alone once more after my mother left for the evening. I made an effort to persuade myself that everything would be all right and that I could live with him in the same home without developing the same risky habits. However, I felt in my heart that I was deceiving myself. I heard him behind me as I was idly tidying up in the kitchen after supper. I felt that familiar thrill of eagerness when I heard his footsteps. I knew it was him without even turning around. Unspoken anxiety thickened the air as it shifted. Victor said, "You're quiet tonight," in his usual smooth and low voice. He drew nearer until I could feel his body heat behind me. As I dried a plate, my hands shaking, I lied and said, "I'm just tired." Naturally, he didn't believe me. His eyes were on me, waiting, watching. He was always able to tell when I was lying and when I was attempting to hide. However, it never succeeded. Even when I tried to pull away, Victor had a way of drawing me back in. "You've been avoiding me," he murmured quietly, with a hint of wicked humor in his voice. "Why?" I took a deep breath and tried to concentrate on the task at hand. I murmured, "I haven't." But even I thought the words sounded weak. He whispered, "Isabel." And I felt a chill go through me when I heard my name. I could feel his breath on my neck now that he was so near. "Observe me." I paused, holding the towel in my hands tighter. My body was deceiving me once more, pulling me toward him despite my knowledge that it was wrong, despite my mind's cries for me to move away and put as much distance between us as possible. I turned to him slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. I could see that same need, that same deadly intensity that prevented me from thinking clearly, when his dark eyes met mine. I was caught when he moved closer and pressed me up against the counter. The intense yearning that had been growing between us for weeks was trapped between him and me. He stated in a deep, confident voice, "You can't keep running from this. You sense it. I am certain that you do." He reached out and gently but purposefully brushed his fingertips on my cheek, causing my breath to catch in my throat. I felt the heat rising in my body and my pulse speeding as the touch gave me a shock of electricity. I said, "We can't." But even I found the words to be weak and unconvincing. "And yet," he whispered, drawing me in closer as his hand moved down to rest on my waist. "We're here." I ought to have shoved him aside. I ought to have urged him to cease. However, I didn't. Rather, my body betrayed every logical notion I had, and I stood there. I felt the air between us get thicker and heavier as his hand crept lower, following the curvature of my waist, as though the room itself knew we were about to do something we couldn't undo. With guilt still gnawing at me, I muttered, "I don't want to hurt her." Yet my body still leaned toward his touch, yearning for it. Victor's voice was a sensual whisper as his lips touched my ear. "She is not involved in this. This concerns us." I felt the tightness coil inside of me tighten as I closed my eyes. His hands were all over me, soft yet firm, and I could feel myself slipping, sinking more into the pit we had made. Like a fire that threatened to devour all in its path, the heat between us was intolerable. With his lips grazing the side of my neck, he muttered, "Tell me to stop," sending chills down my spine. "Tell me you're not interested in this." However, I was unable to. My hands went to his chest, and as I felt the hard planes of his body against mine, I pushed him closer rather than pushing him away. My senses were overwhelmed by the warm, musky, delicious scent of him, which impairs judgment and prevents me from thinking about anything but him. "I can't," I said in a tremulous but honest voice. "I am unable to stop." All he needed was that. It was as though the world vanished when his lips struck mine. Only we were there, and the heat was all-consuming and oppressive, threatening to suffocate us both. As our bodies crushed together, the tension between us finally broke as his hands tangled in my hair and drew me in closer. I could feel his breath catch. The illicit yearning that had been bubbling beneath the surface for so long had us engrossed in one another. His touch was all over me, burning my skin and causing pain I didn't know was conceivable. And I was unable to stop. I had no desire to. But then everything fell apart as fast as it had started. We both snapped out of the moment as we heard a creak of floorboards coming from the hallway. Our bodies remained squeezed together as we froze, breathing raggedly. Panic swept through me as my heart thumped in my chest. Were we spotted? Was there anyone who heard? There was a flash of something there. Something dangerous. But Victor was the first to pull away, his eyes dark and unreadable. The tension in the air was still heavy and oppressive, yet he straightened and smoothed his shirt as though nothing had happened. He said in a promising whisper, "We'll finish this later," and turned to leave me standing there, gasping for air and feeling as though the weight of what we had just done was bearing down on me. If you were in my shoes, how would you respond? Would you have allowed yourself to fall further, or could you have prevented it? I need to know that I'm not the only one having this problem, so please let me know in the comments. The ensuing days were a haze of yearning and shame. My intellect begged me to stop, but every time I saw Victor, my body tensed with anticipation. But after what had transpired in the kitchen, halting was no longer an option. I was too lost, too enmeshed in a web of passion and feelings that I was unable to break free from. The tension was intense every time we passed each other in the house, even though I hadn't talked to Victor since that night. Thick and oppressive, it hovered between us, a continual reminder of what we had accomplished, and what we still needed to do. My mother was too preoccupied with her own world to realize what was going on right in front of her. The situation changed on a Friday night. Victor and I were once again alone after my mother traveled for the weekend to see some relatives. I should have gone to a friend's house or found a reason to leave, but I chose to stay even though I knew it was risky. I felt compelled to stay and watch where this perverse game would lead us. There was a knock on the door while I was in my room. Knowing who it was before I even opened it made my heart skip a beat. He was standing there when I did, leaning nonchalantly against the doorframe and staring at me with his black eyes. This time, there was no need for small talk or pretense. We both understood his purpose. "Can I come in?" Victor spoke in a low, velvety voice that melted into my skin. I ought to have declined. My pulse was pounding as I shut the door behind him, but instead of closing it and ending it there, I moved aside to let him in. The weight of all we had left unsaid hung in the air between us, making it electrifying. Victor was in the center of the room, his presence strong and overwhelming. With each second that went by, I felt the attraction between us growing stronger than before. "You've been avoiding me," he stated in a composed yet determined tone. Like he was already formulating his next move, his gaze wandered over me, resting on my lips and neck. "I had to," I said, saying hardly louder than a whisper. "I didn't know how to face you after." He interrupted me as he moved in closer, his fingers cupping my chin. My legs went weak as his thumb brushed across my bottom lip in a forceful yet tender manner. His breath was hot against my skin as he muttered, "You don't have to be afraid. This is between us, no one else." With his hands on me and him so near, I tried to slow my breathing by closing my eyes, but it was impossible. Every word and every touch was like fuel for an uncontrollable inferno. I said, "Victor, we can't keep doing this?" But I didn't believe what I was saying. I was already leaning into him, wanting his warmth and touch. He didn't say anything in response. Rather, his hand moved to my waist and drew me to him. His lips touched my ear and I could feel his heartbeat, steady and powerful. With a low growl that chilled my spine, he whispered, "Tell me you don't want this." But I was unable to express it. Nor with my body reacting to him already. Nor with his hands on me. I put my hands on his chest and rather than pushing him away, I drew him in, needing him as much as I needed air. The world seemed to collapse when Victor's lips struck mine. As his hands moved over my body, burning my skin, there was only the heat between us and nothing else. I couldn't get enough of his claiming, possessive touch. I needed and desired more. With our bodies entangled in a tangle of limbs and longing, we staggered back toward the bed. He was touching every part of me, including my neck, waist and hips, as if he was attempting to commit every detail to memory. In the way he made me feel and the way he made everything else vanish, I was engrossed in it. However, the sound of a phone ringing broke the moment just when the tension was at its highest. Both of us froze, our bodies still pushed together, our breaths labored. My phone buzzed with an incoming call while it was resting on the nightstand. I felt sick to my stomach as I looked at the screen. My mom was the one. As though challenging me to respond, Victor's dark, menacing gaze locked with mine. "Don't," he said in a low, authoritative whisper. As his hand moved up my thigh, I was reminded of the heat that still burned between us and the situation we were in. However, I was unable to ignore the call. With my heart thumping in my chest, I gently pulled him aside and reached for the phone. "It's my mom," I responded, my voice wavering. In an attempt to calm my breathing, I put the phone to my ear, but my heart continued to race. I tried to sound natural when I said, "Hey Mom," but my voice sounded breathless. "Is everything okay?" My mother's worried voice said, "Sweetheart, you sound off," over the phone. I looked at Victor, who was grinning at me, that sinister, perilous yearning still shining in his eyes. I tried to gather myself, but my heart was pounding. I lied and said, "Yeah, everything's fine. My stepfather's temptation could destroy everything, and my mom has no idea what's happening between us." Have you ever kept a secret that may destroy everything because it was so risky and enticing? That was my existence, and the secret I kept was as illegal as the subsequent sinister cravings. This is my story, and my name is Isabel. Something inside of me changed the night following my 18th birthday, and now that I'm 19, it all began. This is not what I asked for. Victor wasn't someone I asked for. But here I am, speaking the truth to you. I need to get it off my chest, even if I'm not proud of it. My stepfather, Victor, was no ordinary man. With just a glance, he was able to command the room and exert a silent authority over others. I knew there was something sinister about him from the time he married my mother. However, I believed that danger was not intended for me. Like a breeze that gradually develops into a storm, it started off so innocently. I have a clear memory of that evening. The house was silent and it was late. The only sounds were the waves breaking outside, as though the sea was aware of the mayhem that was developing inside of me. My mother didn't realize the tension was rising below. She was sleeping upstairs. When I arrived downstairs, Victor was seated at the kitchen table, wearing a flimsy robe that hardly fit me. I convinced myself that I wasn't attempting to impress him. However, the slow, methodical manner his eyes followed me gave the impression that he saw me in a way that no one else had. At first, he merely watched without saying anything. Even though it was unsettling, I couldn't help myself. His eyes were heavy and seductive, and something dark and terrible sprang up inside of me at that very moment. As though the room itself could sense the change in our dynamic, the air between us was heavy and nearly oppressive. Then he said, "You're up late," in a low, nearly growling voice. As if daring me to step beyond an unseen line from which none of us could return, his words lingered in the air like a challenge. I said, "I couldn't sleep," as my heart began to race. My feet remained set despite knowing I should leave, defying the logic that was screaming in my head. He grinned, but it was a smile that aroused something deep inside me rather than reaching his eyes. "Spend some time sitting with me, keep me company." I paused, but only briefly. The table felt like a thin wall separating two worlds, one familiar and comfortable, the other unfamiliar and perilous, and before I realized it, I was seated across from him. His fingers brushed mine as his hand went over the table. Even though the touch was fleeting, it made me quiver. It was plenty to make me gasp for air and to get me to doubt every single barrier I believed I had. He said, "I've been watching you," in a softer, more personal tone. I didn't pull away as his fingers lingered for a second longer than they should have. "You're not a little girl anymore, Isabel." My chest was thumping with my heart. I ought to have said something, anything at all, but I was stuck in this weird, perverse moment. His words and the way he gazed at me conveyed a sense of both fear and excitement, as if I were more than simply his stepdaughter and no longer invisible. I was afraid because I was something more. The tension-filled stillness that lingered between us was a result of unsaid wishes seething beneath the surface. My thinking begged me to flee and to put an end to whatever it was before it got out of control. However, my body ignored me. Despite my knowledge that it was improper, I felt a strong attraction to him. "Does it scare you?" As if he could read the struggle brewing within me, he inquired in a voice so silky it was practically a whisper. "The way I look at you?" I tightened my throat and swallowed hard. I was unable to respond. Rather, I found myself standing and moving toward him around the table as though I were unable to escape some unseen force. As I got closer, his body tensed and his eyes darkened. The heat of his presence and the way the air between us seemed to vibrate with expectation caused me to stop a few inches from him. I felt a shock of electricity as his hand extended and brushed across my arm's sensitive flesh. My body betrayed me once more, and I let out a quiet gasp. Even when I muttered, "You know this can't happen," I didn't believe myself. A different story was revealed by the way I shuddered under his touch. He whispered. And yet here you are. As his hand moved up my arm and settled on my shoulder. I felt my body lean into his touch as his thumb touched the side of my neck, seeking it in a manner I couldn't quite put my finger on. I tried to ignore the guilt that was eating at me by closing my eyes, but it didn't help. I had gone too far. My heart was pounding, my breathing was shallow, and I could feel his hot, seductive breath on my skin. I wanted to halt. I had to quit. However, I was unable to. With his lips so close to mine that I could just taste the forbidden, he said, "What do you want, Isabel?" I opened my eyes and looked him in the eye. The same yearning that boiled within me was seen in his eyes. But before I could respond, the moment was cut short by the sound of footsteps coming from upstairs. Mom was up. I took a step back, the reality of what nearly happened rushing down around me, my heart thumping in my chest. Victor flashed a sly smile, as though he had just won a devious game. He got up and brushed by me, his hand caressing my waist as he went. "We should talk again sometime," he muttered. The moment was over in an instant. However, the fire he had kindled within me was unquenchable. "And you, how would you respond if I were you? Would you walk away or give in to temptation? Tell us what you think in the comments section below. I need to understand that I'm not alone in feeling torn between good and wrong." I couldn't get that night out of my head. I wasn't sure I could resist the way Victor's breath brushed across my lips and the way his touch shot sparks through my skin. The power he had over me, a subtle unsaid authority that both scared and made me feel alive, was more than simply the physical. And we started playing the game seriously after that evening. Days went by, and on the surface, everything appeared to be as usual. My mother was blissfully oblivious, as though she was unaffected by the tension in the air. However, every look, every word and every moment we shared became electrified between Victor and me. It was approaching something that neither of us could stop, like a slow-burning fuse. I made an effort to stay away from him, telling myself that it was the proper course of action. I spent more time in my room, concentrated on my coursework, or went to the beach to get some fresh air and let the sound of the waves soothe my mind. But the memory of his touch followed me everywhere like an unseen hand. Things got out of hand on a Saturday afternoon. Victor and I were left alone while my mother left for some errands in town. I had promised myself that I would remain in my room, stay away from him, and maintain my normalcy. However, as the hours passed, the house's silence tormented me, and the more I considered it, the more I found myself straying downstairs, attracted to the peril like a moth to a flame. He was reading a newspaper in the living room as if nothing had ever transpired between us. However, I could sense him. Every part of me knew about him. I remained there with my heart pounding, not sure if I should approach him or head back upstairs. But my body had already decided and was moving in closer. He continued, "I see you've come out of hiding," in a calm voice that had a tinge that made my heart race. I could tell he felt me even though his gaze remained fixed on the newspaper. "Is this the way things will be going forward, Isabel? Me chasing, you running?" I tried to say, "I'm not running," but my voice deceived me. We were both aware that I was lying. "Really?" Now, his tone was playful, as though he were challenging me to tell the truth. When he eventually lowered the newspaper and met my gaze, the magnetic force between us returned with greater vigor than before. "Because it seems like that's exactly what you've been doing." I started to reply, but the words became stuck in my throat. Rather, I simply stood there and gazed at him, feeling the gravity of the situation increase. My mind cried out for me to get out, to return upstairs, and to stop this risky game before it continued. However, my body had other ideas. With his gaze fixed on mine, Victor reclined in his chair. He whispered, "Come here." But it wasn't a request. It was a command, and I felt a shock of energy. After a brief moment of hesitation, I moved forward. I was unable to stop myself. I was unwilling to stop. As I walked toward him, my heart thumping louder with every step, the space felt too small and too hot. When I got close enough, he extended his hand and ran it up my arm, causing my skin to tingle from the heat of his touch. Breathless, I waited there, anticipating the next move. After that, he carefully and slowly drew me onto his lap. The way his hand slid over me and the feel of his body beneath mine was seductive, even though I knew it was wrong. My entire body was ablaze, with every nerve begging for more. Even so, a tiny voice in the back of my mind kept reminding me of the repercussions and that my mother was only a few miles away and was totally unaware of the treachery taking place right in front of her. "What are we doing?" I didn't know if I wanted an answer, so I whispered. Victor's lips touched my ear as his hands closed tighter around my waist. His breath was hot against my skin as he whispered, "Exactly what you want." His fingers moved slowly in circles around my exposed skin as they slid under the hem of my shirt, giving me chills with every touch. My body betrayed me once more as I leaned toward him when I should have stopped him and backed away. I felt my breath catch as his hands rose higher and his fingertips touched the curvature of my waist. The distinction between right and wrong became hazy, and my only thought was how wonderful it felt to be wanted and caressed in this way. I began to say, "We can't." But my words were halting and unconvincing. Already I was leaning into him, wanting and needing more. He pressed his lips to my neck and said, "We already are," which caused my veins to boil up. My body shook with anticipation as I let out a faint gasp as his fingers crept lower, hinting at the border of the forbidden. But before anything further could happen, there was a knock on the door. The moment broke as we both froze. Panic was coursing through my veins as my heart raced. My mom couldn't have returned by now, could she? With a dark, menacing flicker in his eyes, Victor's hand slipped away from me. "Go," he urged softly. His tone calm yet forceful, as though nothing unusual had just occurred. "Upstairs. Now." I refrained from arguing. With my legs shaking, I leaped from his lap and rushed back to my room, my thoughts racing. With my heart racing and the realization of what nearly transpired weighing heavily on me, I closed the door behind me. I tried to quiet the roaring tempest of emotions inside of me by pressing my back against the door and breathing heavily. There was still heat between us, simmering beneath the surface, waiting to burst at the next chance. How would you have responded? Remaining or walking away? I don't even know what I'm doing anymore, so please let me know in the comments. Even though I made an effort to suppress it, the guilt kept eating away at me. I kept thinking about Victor's hands on me and the fire between us whenever I was by myself. As if he knew precisely how to pull me apart, I would close my eyes and feel his breath on my neck and the way his fingers had moved over my flesh. I felt alive, even powerful, but that strength had a cost, and I wasn't prepared to pay it. My mother had no suspicions. Unaware of the chaos simmering beneath the surface, she continued to live her days with the same radiant smile. I saw that I was avoiding her more and more and stayed away from her whenever I could. I didn't want her to ask me questions I couldn't answer or see the shame in my eyes. I was too terrified to witness the extent of the harm that would be caused when the truth ultimately exploded because it was a ticking time bomb. The situation worsened once more on a Sunday afternoon. Victor and I were alone again since my mom had gone to see a friend across town. Since that day in the living room, the air between us had become more dense. Every interaction was a game we were both playing and neither of us had the guts to stop, a quiet challenge. I pretended to read while I sat on the back porch, but my gaze kept going to the open door behind me. I could feel him, the weight of his presence raising the hair on the back of my neck, and I knew he was inside. With him so near, I was unable to concentrate as my fingers fumbled with the pages. I knew it was him before I even turned when the door cracked open. He went outside, moving slowly and deliberately, as though he wanted me to have time to respond. With every stride he took toward me, my pulse quickened and my heart raced. "Isabel," he said in a quiet, nearly whispery voice, as though we were exchanging secrets.